In the Valley of Mexico, under expansive skies where eagles soared and encircled by formidable volcanic peaks, a civilization emerged, whose profound spiritual understanding would profoundly influence Mesoamerican history. This populace, identifying themselves as Mexica but historically recognized as Aztecs, did not merely craft tales, they forged an intricate conceptual framework that elucidated existence, legitimized their ascent to power, and established the rhythms of daily life. For these people of central Mexico, their sacred narratives were more than simple stories. They functioned simultaneously as historical chronicles, divine prophecies, and universal truths. Their worldview seamlessly interwoven these domains, unlike the modern separation of fact and fiction. Their sacred stories were dynamic entities, breathing, evolving, and manifesting in the world through ritual, architecture, and the very social order they upheld. These narratives permeated the populace through various channels. Priests and elders diligently transmitted ancient wisdom through oral tradition, their words carefully preserved across generations. The elite commissioned elaborate pictorial manuscripts, known as codices, where complex symbolism captured divine histories. The Codex Borbonicus, with its vibrant depictions of deities and celestial cycles, and the Codex Mendoza, documenting imperial conquests alongside spiritual imagery, are among the most significant survivors of Spanish destruction. The Templo Mayor of Tenochtitlan itself embodied these sacred beliefs in stone and sacrifice. Its dual shrines dedicated to Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc, its meticulously aligned staircases, and the massive sculpted disk of the dismembered goddess Coyolxauhqui at its base, all manifested the supernatural landscape in physical form. For ordinary citizens, calendar rituals, marked by feasting, dancing, and bloodletting, intrinsically linked daily existence to these divine patterns. Despite their sophisticated theological system, these indigenous people were relatively new arrivals to central Mexico. Migrating from the northern deserts in the early 13th century, they initially served as mercenaries for established city-states. Often viewed as uncivilized outsiders by older cultures, they gradually assimilated local traditions while steadfastly preserving their distinct identity, which revolved around their patron deity, Huitzilopochtli. By the early 15th century, this once marginalized society had transformed into formidable imperial rulers. This transformation was achieved through a potent combination of military prowess, strategic alliances, and religious innovation. Under the leadership of figures like Huitzilopochtli and Tlacaelel, they forged a triple alliance with neighboring city-states Texcoco and Tlacopan, establishing a dominant hegemony over much of central Mexico. Alongside this political consolidation, there was a deliberate reshaping of their origin stories, designed to justify their rapid ascension. "We must destroy the old books," Tlacaelel reportedly declared, initiating a systematic revision of historical records to emphasize their divine destiny. This calculated spiritual engineering elevated them from humble migrants to a chosen people of the sun god. Their conquests were recontextualized as sacred obligations rather than mere territorial expansion. Sacred narratives permeated every aspect of this imperial society. The complex calendar system, with its 260-day ritual cycle intricately interlocking with a 365-day solar year, meticulously determined auspicious days for all activities, from planting crops to waging war. Social classes mirrored a divine order, with nobles asserting a closer connection to celestial ancestries than commoners. Even the collection of tribute from conquered territories drew its legitimacy from ancestral precedents. For ordinary people in Tenochtitlan or rural farming communities, these beliefs provided both profound meaning and practical guidance. A farmer offering blood to ensure rain understood this act within the context of Tlaloc's ancient pact with humanity. Warriors who captured enemies for sacrifice participated directly in the eternal struggle to nourish the sun god, Huitzilopochtli, thereby preventing universal cataclysm. Poets and philosophers explored these universal truths through the concept of flower and song, in Xochitl and Quetzalcoatl. This poetic tradition acknowledged both the inherent beauty and the fleeting impermanence of earthly existence, while simultaneously seeking deeper spiritual truths. As one surviving poem eloquently expresses, "Only on earth is the region of the fleeting moment. Is it also thus in the place where in some way one lives?" Such philosophical questions reveal the sophisticated theological reflections that underpinned this central Mexican religion. The spiritual framework of the Triple Alliance was not static. It was dynamic and responsive to political needs and cultural exchange. When conquering a region, they often incorporated local deities into their extensive pantheon rather than simply imposing their own gods. This religious syncretism fostered an ever-expanding divine hierarchy while simultaneously reinforcing imperial authority. The principal deities maintained their preeminence, but local gods received recognition within the broader theological system. Within Tenochtitlan itself, religious specialists dedicated their entire lives to maintaining supernatural order. Priests underwent rigorous training from childhood, mastering the complex ritual calendar, astronomical observations, and precise ceremonial procedures. Their practices of bloodletting and fasting were understood as establishing direct communication channels with divine powers. Alongside them, skilled artisans meticulously created the physical manifestations of the sacred, elaborate temple sculptures, intricate ritual objects, and detailed costumes that brought otherworldly forces into the tangible world. Despite its apparent exotic remoteness to modern observers, this Mesoamerican spiritual worldview addressed universal human concerns: the origin of existence, the profound problem of death, the unpredictable nature of the natural world, and the perennial search for meaning. Their answers involved a complex understanding of time as both cyclical and linear, where creation inevitably led to destruction, only for the cycle to commence anew. Their beliefs embraced fundamental dualities: creation and destruction, life and death, order and chaos, not as opposing forces, but as complementary aspects of a greater, unified whole. This belief system would face its most profound challenge with the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors in the early 16th century. The sacred framework that had guided imperial expansion for generations would itself become entangled with prophecies of doom and return, creating a fateful ambiguity that complicated their response to these bearded strangers from across the eastern waters. To truly understand the civilization, its rise, its imperial power, and its ultimate fate, requires entering this spiritual landscape. Their vision of the universe was not merely decorative folklore, but the conceptual foundation upon which an entire empire was meticulously built. From the grand cycles of creation and destruction to the intimate relationship between human sacrifice and agricultural fertility, their sacred traditions provided both the questions and the answers that profoundly defined Mesoamerican reality. The story begins not with these people themselves, but with the ancient beliefs they inherited, adapted, and ultimately transformed to create one of the most complex spiritual systems in the ancient world. Long before the central Mexican people arrived in the Valley of Mexico, the spiritual foundations of their worldview had already been laid by earlier civilizations whose impressive monuments still dotted the landscape. These ancestral cultures had established the fundamental patterns of Mesoamerican thought that would eventually shape how the newcomers understood the universe. Although these inherited traditions would be transformed to suit imperial ambitions, the Olmec, who flourished along the Gulf Coast from approximately 1500 to 400 BC, established many of the core elements that would endure throughout Mesoamerican history. Their colossal stone heads, prevalent jaguar imagery, and early versions of the rain deity revealed the nascent stages of a distinctive theological approach. The Olmec concept of divine kingship, where rulers served as mediators between earthly and supernatural realms, established a pattern of religious authority that would resonate through the centuries, influencing Tenochtitlan's later priest-kings. By the time of Teotihuacan's dominance in the first half of the first millennium AD, these foundational concepts had evolved into an elaborate spiritual system. This immense metropolis, whose ruins continue to inspire awe today, established architectural patterns that explicitly expressed cosmological principles. Most notably, the alignment of the Avenue of the Dead with celestial movements, and the imposing pyramids of the sun and moon served as tangible representations of their cosmic understanding. The people of Teotihuacan developed sophisticated calendar systems and intricate ritual practices, many of which centered on the feathered serpent deity, their version of Quetzalcoatl, whose magnificent temple dominated the city's central processional way. When Teotihuacan mysteriously collapsed around 650 AD, its profound cultural legacy dispersed throughout Mesoamerica, influencing subsequent civilizations. The Toltec, emerging several centuries later as the next great power in central Mexico, proudly claimed direct inheritance of Teotihuacan's prestige. Their capital at Tollan, modern Tula, became synonymous with civilization itself, a place of such legendary status that for centuries afterward, claiming Toltec ancestry conferred significant legitimacy upon ruling dynasties throughout the region. Ancient texts recounted the abundance of Tollan. Wealth abounded, squashes grew vast. Cotton in beautiful colors grew naturally. And there were precious birds of shining emerald, lustrous golden yellow, and brilliant red. This idealized vision of Tollan as a paradise of abundance and refinement held tremendous power in the Mesoamerican imagination. For the people who would later arrive in the region as impoverished outsiders, association with this illustrious heritage became a crucial aspect of their claim to power and cultural legitimacy. The semi-historical, semi-legendary figure Tepiltzin Quetzalcoatl emerged during the Toltec era as a paramount cultural hero whose legacy would profoundly influence later indigenous thought. Described in varying accounts as a wise ruler, a master craftsman, and a spiritual leader, his story seamlessly blended with that of the deity Quetzalcoatl to create a complex narrative of civilization, its eventual fall, and a prophesied return. According to these accounts, Tepiltzin Quetzalcoatl established a golden age at Tollan before being driven into exile through the machinations of rival deities and their earthly representatives. Toltec craftsmen were widely celebrated for their extraordinary skill, particularly in working with precious materials like jade, gold, and quetzal feathers. The term, Tolteca, itself became synonymous with artistic mastery throughout Mesoamerica. When the newcomers later sought to establish their cultural legitimacy, they emphasized their connection to this esteemed tradition of excellence, adopting Toltec artistic styles and claiming descent from Toltec nobles who had supposedly settled among them during their own migratory wanderings. By the time these migrating tribes, who would later become the Mexica, arrived in the Valley of Mexico in the early 13th century, the region had fragmented into numerous competing city-states following the Toltec collapse. Each of these established powers maintained local variants of the broader Mesoamerican tradition, complete with distinctive patron deities and unique ceremonial practices. Initially, these established powers dismissed the newly arrived wanderers as uncivilized barbarians, forcing them to serve as mercenaries and settle in marginal territories. This period of subjugation, however, proved crucial for their spiritual development. Serving various city-states exposed these newcomers to a diverse array of ritual practices and divine hierarchies. From the Tepanec of Azcapotzalco, they absorbed military traditions associated with the Eagle and Jaguar warrior orders. From Culhuacan, they strategically claimed connection to the prestigious Toltec lineage through carefully arranged marriages. From Texcoco, they later incorporated philosophical refinements and poetic traditions that would significantly elevate their theological understanding. The once marginalized people skillfully transformed these varied influences into something uniquely their own through a process of selective adaptation. Unlike many conquerors throughout history, they did not simply impose their beliefs on defeated peoples. Instead, they incorporated local traditions into an increasingly complex pantheon, while steadfastly maintaining the supremacy of their own patron deity, Huitzilopochtli. This inclusive approach simultaneously demonstrated respect for local beliefs while subtly subordinating them to the religious authority of the burgeoning empire. When political supremacy was definitively established in the region through the Triple Alliance in the early 15th century, the rulers initiated a remarkable program of spiritual revisionism under the astute guidance of the high priest and royal advisor Tlacaelel. They systematically reinterpreted existing traditions to place themselves squarely at the center of cosmic history. This ambitious project involved both the destruction of older historical records and the deliberate creation of new narratives emphasizing their divine destiny. "The history of other peoples is not for us to guard," Tlacaelel reportedly counseled. "We shall create our own tradition." This statement reflects not merely political calculation but a genuine and profound belief in their divine mission. By reframing their recent rise to power within ancient sacred patterns, they made imperial expansion appear not as naked conquest, but as the fulfillment of divine will. The emphasis on human sacrifice, while rooted in older Mesoamerican traditions, took on an unprecedented scale and intensity under the Triple Alliance. This intensification reflected both a deep theological conviction and a shrewd imperial strategy. The belief that the sun required nourishment through human hearts to continue its journey had ancient antecedents. However, the ruling elite specifically linked this cosmic necessity to their patron deity, Huitzilopochtli, and to their own identity as the people of the sun. This profound connection provided divine sanction for warfare primarily aimed at capturing sacrificial victims. Archaeological evidence strikingly reveals how the imperial center physically anchored its rule in the sacred landscape. At Tenochtitlan, they meticulously built their great temple directly atop earlier structures, incorporating them into a new sacred center that demonstrably dwarfed its predecessors. The orientation and dimensions of the Templo Mayor deliberately referenced older sacred sites while exceeding them in sheer scale and splendor. Through such grand architectural statements, the ruling culture positioned themselves as the culmination of Mesoamerican history, rather than merely inheritors of past traditions. The remarkable speed of their cultural development, transforming from marginalized newcomers to a sophisticated imperial power in just over a century, owes much to their strategic and adaptable approach to spiritual heritage. Rather than outright rejecting the traditions of more established cultures, they immerse themselves in this rich inheritance, carefully reconfiguring it to serve their specific needs and ambitions. The magnificent temples, elaborate ritual performances, and distinctive artistic traditions thus emerge not as revolutionary breaks from the past, but as transformative continuations. Oral histories, carefully preserved by indigenous communities after the Spanish conquest, reveal how the imperial culture positioned themselves within existing sacred narratives while simultaneously adding their own distinctive elements and interpretations. Their celebrated origin story, in which they departed from the mythical Aztlan following divine guidance from Huitzilopochtli, clearly followed patterns established in earlier migration accounts, but with a crucial emphasis on their special relationship with the sun deity. Similarly, their belief in the 5 suns, or cosmic ages, built upon widespread Mesoamerican cyclical time concepts, while placing special emphasis on the current 5th age as one particularly connected to their destiny and imperial mission. This remarkable ability to synthesize diverse influences into a coherent and distinct worldview helps explain how these once despised outsiders transformed themselves into powerful imperial rulers who, as see authority extended across much of Mesoamerica. Their sacred traditions served not merely as spiritual comfort, but as sophisticated tools for understanding and ordering the world. Tools forged from ancient patterns but meticulously shaped to address the specific challenges and opportunities of their unique historical moment. The spiritual vision that sustained the Triple Alliance emerged through this creative tension between profound reverence for inherited wisdom and the transformative power of new revelation. The ancient Mesoamerican view of time and existence centered on a profound vision of cosmic epics, famously known as the 5 suns. This cyclical interpretation of universal history portrayed a world repeatedly formed and subsequently annihilated. Each age concluded with a specific type of catastrophe. only to be miraculously renewed through divine self-offering. For the inhabitants of Tenochtitlan, this was not an abstract theory. It was a living reality that deeply influenced every facet of daily existence, and provided the ultimate justification for their most sacred ceremonies. According to traditional accounts, meticulously preserved in pictorial manuscripts like the Borbonicus and Chimalpopoca codices, the cosmos had already experienced 4 complete eras before our current age. Each previous sun featured unique divine guardians, different human inhabitants, and distinctive subsistence patterns adapted to the conditions of that era. Crucially, each of these previous ages ended with a specific form of devastating destruction, eradicating its population and necessitating divine powers to initiate creation once more. The first sun, Nahuatl for jaguar, existed under the guardianship of Tezcatlipoca, the obsidian mirror deity of destiny and darkness. During this inaugural era, giants populated the earth, surviving solely on wild foods, as agricultural knowledge had not yet been introduced. These early beings, however, lacked the necessary ceremonial knowledge to sustain universal order. This period concluded when enormous jaguars, physical manifestations of supernatural power, consumed both the giants and the celestial body itself, plunging the world into darkness. As one indigenous document relates, "And it is said that when this sun perished, the jaguars devoured all the people. Those who had lived during the first sun were consumed." Such was the inherently uncertain nature of existence in Mesoamerican thought. Even celestial bodies required proper nourishment and ritual attention to persist. The second sun, Nahuatl for wind, arose under the guiding influence of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent deity who is credited with introducing civilization and cultural advancements. The inhabitants of this epoch lived in a period primarily governed by air currents and the element of wind. Although significant societal advancements had occurred during this era, these communities still failed to provide sufficient offerings and maintain proper ritual conduct necessary to preserve cosmic equilibrium. As a result, destruction arrived in the form of cataclysmic, hurricane-force gales that swept away humanity, transforming any survivors into primates who sought refuge in the dense forests. These early epochs, with their repeated cycles of formation and devastation, embodied significant spiritual principles. They firmly established that existence itself was inherently delicate, requiring continuous and meticulous maintenance through proper ceremonial observation and reciprocal offerings. The transformation of survivors into various creatures, primates, fowl, aquatic life, and canines in different narratives, suggested ongoing and intricate connections between human and animal domains, and also served to explain why certain creatures exhibited human-like characteristics or behaviors in the present age. The third sun, Nahuatl for rain, was overseen by Tlaloc, the crucial and powerful precipitation deity. During this period, a more sophisticated human society developed, demonstrating greater advancements than their predecessors. Yet, even this advanced community ultimately neglected their sacred obligations to the supernatural forces. Catastrophe, therefore, came as fiery rainfall, perhaps describing a cataclysmic volcanic activity that consumed the entire world. Survivors of this fiery deluge were transformed into butterflies, avian species, and canines, according to various accounts. In these narratives, the specific forms of destruction corresponded intrinsically to the nature of the presiding guardian deity. Felines were associated with Tezcatlipoca's era, atmospheric phenomena with Quetzalcoatl's, and conflagration with Tlaloc's, suggesting a natural and profound equilibrium where each force ultimately returns to its origin in a cyclical fashion. This consistent pattern reinforced the traditional understanding that every power contained its opposite, and every genesis inherently contained its eventual dissolution, illustrating a deep philosophical grasp of complementary forces. The fourth sun, Nahuatl for water, was governed by Coyolxauhqui, the guardian deity of rivers, lakes, and all waterways. During this epoch, humanity approached a more profound harmony with divine forces, developing advanced cultivation techniques and establishing increasingly complex social structures. Yet, even this advanced society ultimately failed to maintain the necessary sacred balance. As a consequence, destruction arrived as an immense deluge, a great flood that entirely submerged the world. With the few survivors transformed into fish, forever altering their forms. These 4 previous eras collectively established a crucial pattern that not only explained present circumstances but also served as a profound foretelling of the future. For people living during the 5th sun, these were not simply ancient legends. They were urgent and solemn cautions. If previous worlds, despite their achievements and inhabitants, had been relentlessly destroyed, what hope could the current age possibly have without extraordinary dedication to cosmic maintenance through ritual and sacrifice? The 5th sun, Nahuatl, for movement, emerged through an extraordinary and pivotal act of divine sacrifice at the ancient city of Teotihuacan. According to sacred histories, after the devastating flood that concluded the 4th sun, the divine beings gathered in profound darkness to determine who would undertake the immense responsibility of becoming the new celestial light. The humble deity Nanahuatzin, covered in sores, bravely volunteered to cast himself into the sacred flames. He emerged transformed as the radiant orb of the sun. The proud deity Tequisistecatl, shamed by Nanahuatzin's courage, followed suit, becoming the moon. However, this newly created sun remained stubbornly stationary in the eastern sky, unable to begin its vital journey. It was only when all the other divine beings recognized this cosmic impasse and sacrificed themselves, offering their own life essence, that the sun finally began to move, thus establishing the fundamental principle that would forever govern indigenous religious practice. Without sacrifice, cosmic motion halts. The very life essence of the gods had set the universe in motion, and human vital energy would thenceforth be required to sustain it. Unlike previous eras, which were specifically assigned to individual deities, the 5th sun belonged to the principle of movement itself, representing a more dynamic and inherently precarious cosmic arrangement. The calendar symbol for Allan strikingly resembles 4 points arranged around a central eye, powerfully suggesting both a precarious stability and the constant, inherent threat of disruption. Before the concept of the 5 suns, and indeed before the earth itself even existed, there was a more fundamental reality. The primordial divine energies that would eventually shape all of creation. The ancient Mesoamerican understanding of cosmic origins began not with emptiness or void, but with a foundational concept of duality, a complementary pairing of masculine and feminine principles that together comprised the generative source of all existence. This foundational concept of paired opposites would resonate and echo throughout the entire spiritual system of central Mexico, permeating every level of divine and earthly reality. At the very highest level of divine reality dwelled Ometeotl, a name literally meaning two God, or dual divinity. This ultimate entity encompassed both Ometeotli, the Lord of Duality, and Omesahutl, the Lady of Duality, representing the masculine and feminine aspects existing in perfect and eternal unity. Unlike the more active powers who would later directly intervene in worldly affairs, Ometeotl remained somewhat removed from direct interaction with creation, serving instead as the fundamental, ultimate source from which all other divine energies profoundly emerged. That which is above all heavens, that which is beyond all reach. As one poetic fragment beautifully describes this ultimate divine reality. The one through whom we live, the one who is night and wind. This description powerfully suggests a being both transcendent and immanent, beyond direct human experience, yet permeating all existence in a pervasive and undeniable way. Ometeotl resided in Omeocan, the place of duality, conceptualized as the highest of the 13 heavens in the intricate indigenous cosmic structure. From this primordial duality came the 4 fundamental forces, personified as the Tezcatlipocus or smoking mirrors. Each of these powerful entities was associated with a specific cardinal direction and a distinctive color. These beings represented the active principles that would shape the emergent cosmos. bringing it into form and giving it dynamic qualities. Their complex interrelationships established the pattern of creative tension that would characterize the universe. Defining the interplay of forces within it. The black Tezcatlipoca, associated with the north, embodied night, obsidian, sorcery, and the inexorable force of fate. This entity, often referred to simply as Tezcatlipoca, represented both immense creative and destructive potential. Watching human affairs through his obsidian mirror and intervening through unpredictable and often unsettling manifestations. His occasional appearance as a jaguar connected him to the primal, untamed forces that would later destroy the first sun, reinforcing his dual nature. The blue Tezcatlipoca, associated with the south, was better known as Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird deity who would later become the special patron and guiding force of the Mexica people of Tenochtitlan, representing the power of will, the intensity of warfare, and the vital energy of the sun. This force embodied the principle of active struggle, deemed absolutely necessary for cosmic maintenance and the perpetuation of life. The red Tezcatlipoca, associated with the east, manifested as Cyclical, our Lord the Flayed One, who profoundly governed agricultural fertility, seasonal renewal, and the often painful yet necessary process of transformation. This divine power embodied the profound principle that new life and renewal intrinsically emerge through the sacrifice and shedding of the old, a concept deeply rooted in agricultural cycles. The white Tezcatlipoca, associated with the west, was more commonly known as Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, representing wisdom, boundless creativity, and the foundations of civilization. This force embodied the organizing principles deemed necessary for cosmic order and societal structure. The complex and often conflicting relationship between the white and black Tezcatlipocas, Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca, would become central to later creation narratives, defining a dynamic and essential tension. Each of these primordial forces, in a sophisticated understanding of interconnectedness, contained aspects of all the others. Just as Ometeotl itself contained both masculine and feminine principles in harmonious unity. Black contained white, death contained life, and destruction contained creation. Not as completely separate or opposing forces, but as complementary aspects of unified, ongoing processes. This nuanced perspective created a theological system far more sophisticated than simple dualism, profoundly recognizing the necessary interplay of seemingly contradictory forces as essential for cosmic balance. Having established these fundamental energies, indigenous creation accounts describe a meticulous series of creative acts that gradually formed the layered cosmos. Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca, representing complementary creative principles, work together despite their inherent tension, demonstrating that even opposing forces could collaborate for the greater good of creation. The cosmos they shaped consisted of 13 ascending heavens, the earthly realm, and 9 descending underworlds, meticulously creating a structured universe with specific divine residences at each distinct level. One central creation story powerfully tells how these two primordial powers, perceiving only primordial waters below, transformed themselves into enormous serpents. They then tore apart the great earth monster, Cipactli, sometimes referred to as Tlaltecutli, the Earth Lord. From this dismembered cosmic being, they painstakingly created the physical world. Mountains from its bones, rivers from its blood, and caves and springs from its eyes and mouth. This violent act of creation established a recurring and profound pattern where new order and life intrinsically emerged through sacrifice and dismemberment. And Cipactli was thrown down, recounts one ancient text. All that was solid in her became earth, and from her hair and skin came grasses and small flowers. From her eyes, wells and springs and small caves. From her mouth, rivers and large caves. From her nose, valleys. From her shoulders, mountains. This creation through dismemberment firmly established a reciprocal relationship between the divine and human realms. Just as the supernatural being sacrificed a cosmic entity to create the world, humans would later be expected to offer sacrifices to maintain what had been created. The earth, born through violence and sacrifice, therefore required continuous offerings to sustain its fertility and ensure its continued existence. With the physical world now established, attention then turned to creating appropriate inhabitants. According to sacred histories, multiple attempts were required before achieving a satisfactory human population. These successive attempts paralleled the different human types associated with each of the 5 sons, but focused specifically on the internal development of the current age. The first human prototypes lacked proper proportion and intelligence. Some accounts describe these earliest beings as misshapen giants who could not properly venerate the divine powers or fulfill their sacred duties. These failed creations were subsequently destroyed or transformed into various animals or natural features, illustrating the impermanence of imperfect forms. The profound lesson embedded in these failed attempts emphasized a core principle: humans existed primarily to honor and sustain divine forces. Beings incapable of this sacred duty had no place in the cosmic order, as their existence would disrupt the delicate balance. The gradual refinement of human creation reflected broader cultural values prevalent throughout ancient Mesoamerica. Each successive attempt brought humanity closer to the ideal of beings who could both receive divine blessings and reciprocate through proper ritual observance and offerings. This mutual and reciprocal relationship between human and divine realms formed the very core of religious practice in the Valley of Mexico, underpinning all sacred actions and beliefs. The cosmos that emerged from these intricate creative acts exhibited both a vertical and horizontal organization, reflecting a highly sophisticated conceptualization of space. Vertically, the universe consisted of 13 ascending heavens, each with its specific divine residence and unique characteristics. Below the earthly realm were 9 descending underworlds, culminating in Mictlan, the land of the dead, the ultimate destination for most human souls. This vertical structure was connected by a central axis, often symbolically represented by the great ceiba tree Yaxch, whose branches reached into the heavens and roots extended deep into the underworld, linking all realms. Horizontally, the cosmos was meticulously organized according to the 4 cardinal directions, each associated with specific colors, elemental forces, and distinctive divine powers. East represented light, fertility, and new beginnings, embodying renewal. North embodied cold, ancestral wisdom, and death, representing the profound and mysterious aspects of existence. West signified femininity, darkness, and the setting sun, representing transformation and the end of cycles. South represented heat, youth, and raw energy, embodying vitality and growth. A fifth crucial direction, the center, where the vertical axis passed directly through the earthly realm, represented balance, integration, and the sacred point of connection between all dimensions. This complex spatial organization provided a precise template for everything from the intricate design of temple architecture to the careful layout of city planning. Tenochtitlan itself was meticulously divided into 4 main quarters, radiating outwards from the sacred precinct at its very center, thus physically embodying the cosmic pattern and bringing the divine into urban form. Similarly, the Templo Mayor, with its dual shrines dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, south, and Tlaloc, north, perfectly materialized cosmic principles in architectural form, creating a physical representation of divine balance and the complementary forces that governed the world. The layered heavens housed different classes of supernatural beings, with the highest realms occupied by the most abstract and remote divine principles, reflecting a hierarchy of spiritual power. The 13th heaven, Omiocan, housed the dual creator Omidyatl, the ultimate source of all existence. Below this supreme level resided various manifestations of celestial powers, each with specific functions in maintaining cosmic order and the flow of divine energy. The arrangement of these realms reflected both hierarchy and complementarity, with opposing forces carefully distributed to maintain universal balance and prevent stagnation or chaos. The 9 underworlds, beginning immediately below the Earth's surface, featured increasingly challenging and perilous environments, culminating in Mictlan, the deepest realm where most human souls eventually arrived. This arduous journey through the underworld typically took 4 years for the deceased, requiring passage through regions of clashing mountains, razor-sharp winds, and other formidable obstacles designed to test and transform the soul. Only those who died special deaths, such as in childbirth, in battle, or by water, avoided this arduous journey, ascending instead to specialized paradises associated with specific deities or forms of demise. This elaborate cosmic architecture provided priests and philosophers of ancient Mesoamerica with a comprehensive and intricate framework for understanding the nature of reality. Every natural phenomenon, from thunderstorms to earthquakes, could be precisely located within this vast system and attributed to specific divine activities or interactions. Similarly, all human experiences, from the moment of birth to the inevitability of death, found profound and meaningful context within this comprehensive cosmic order. Nothing occurred randomly. Everything reflected the ongoing interactions of divine powers operating according to discernible and interconnected patterns. Particularly remarkable was the indigenous understanding of the reciprocal relationship between cosmic levels. The divine beings had created the world through immense sacrifice, often involving their own essence. But they, in turn, profoundly depended on human offerings and ritual sustenance to maintain their strength and continue their vital functions. This mutual dependence created a universe where both supernatural and human actors shared responsibility for maintaining cosmic order and preventing its dissolution. Human ritual was not mere supplication, it was understood as essential participation in universal processes, an active role in maintaining the delicate balance of existence. The cosmic creation accounts also established fundamental patterns that would repeat throughout Central Mexican religious thought. The profound principles of duality, sacrifice, dismemberment, and reconstitution appeared at every level, from cosmic origins to agricultural cycles and human ritual practices. When priests flayed sacrificial victims and wore their skins during spring fertility rituals, they were not merely performing a gruesome act. They were reenacting primordial creative processes, actively participating in fundamental cosmic patterns established at the very beginning of time, ensuring renewal and abundance. Archaeological evidence from Tenochtitlan's Templo Mayor vividly reveals how these creation narratives directly influenced architectural symbolism. The temple's platform featured powerful sculptures of dismembered divine beings, explicitly connecting the sacred building to primordial creative acts of sacrifice and rebirth. Similarly, offerings meticulously buried within the temple included items symbolizing the 4 directions and cosmic layers, physically embedding cosmic architecture within the ritual center itself. The indigenous concept of creation differed significantly from linear models familiar to Western thinking. Rather than envisioning a single, definitive creative act at a fixed point in time, the ancient Mesoamericans conceived of ongoing cycles of creation, destruction, and recreation. The universe was not a finished product. It required constant maintenance through both divine and human action. This perspective created a distinctive consciousness where creation was never truly complete, but continually threatened, requiring vigilant and active participation in its maintenance. While many aspects of this complex cosmology had antecedents in older traditions, the people of the Triple Alliance skillfully synthesized these diverse elements into a particularly cohesive and powerful system that profoundly justified their imperial position. By identifying their patron deity, Huitzilopochtli, as one of the 4 fundamental cosmic forces, the blue Tezcatlipoca, they strategically positioned themselves at the very center of universal processes. Their conquest thus became not mere political expansion, but the fulfillment of cosmic necessity, a sacred obligation to maintain the universe. For ordinary citizens, these abstract cosmological principles manifested directly in their daily lives through household shrines, ritual observations meticulously keyed to the calendar, and active participation in larger community ceremonies. The layered cosmos was not merely a theological concept, it was a lived reality. with different divine powers requiring appropriate offerings at specific times and in particular places. The comprehensive nature of this system meant that virtually every human activity, from planting crops to weaving cloth, was intimately connected to the divine creative forces. The violent aspects of creation mythology in central Mexico, dismemberment, sacrifice, and cataclysm, reflected a profound understanding of the fundamental nature of existence. Creation always required destruction. Life emerged from death. Order developed from chaos. This perspective produced a distinctive cultural outlook that embraced the necessary partnership of seemingly opposites rather than seeking to eliminate one in favor of the other. Even as warriors captured sacrificial victims for ritual purposes, poets contemplatively explored the transience of mortal existence and the enduring mystery of divine purpose. This interplay between seemingly contradictory forces permeated spiritual thought at every level throughout ancient Mesoamerica. The cosmos emerged not from singularity but from duality and multiplicity, paired opposites generating creative tension and dynamic interaction. Even the most fearsome divine beings displayed both destructive and nurturing aspects, much as the natural forces they represented could both destroy and sustain human communities. Reflecting a holistic view of nature, this nuanced understanding produced a religious system of remarkable sophistication, capable of accommodating complexity rather than reducing it to simplistic formulations or rigid categories. From the primordial duality of Ometeotl, through the four Tezcatlipocas, and into the manifold deities of the indigenous pantheon, the divine realm displayed increasing differentiation and specialization. This proliferation of divine powers reflected a fundamental insight. The inherent complexity of existence required multiple principles working in concert, rather than a single governing force. The resulting pantheon, while initially bewildering to outsiders, offered a remarkably comprehensive framework for understanding natural processes and the full spectrum of human experiences. This central Mexican religious system presents one of history's most complex spiritual hierarchies, with hundreds of divine beings meticulously arranged in an elaborate order. Far from a chaotic assemblage, this divine structure reflected a sophisticated understanding of natural forces, intricate social structures, and profound cosmic principles. Though bewildering to early Spanish observers, who often mistook specialized aspects of the same supernatural power for entirely different entities, the indigenous populations navigated this spiritual landscape with remarkable precision, knowing exactly which divine force to petition for specific needs at particular times. At the summit of daily religious practice stood Huitzilopochtli, hummingbird of the left, or hummingbird of the south, the special patron deity of the Nahua peoples. Unlike many others in the pantheon, Huitzilopochtli had no clear antecedents among earlier Mesoamerican civilizations, strongly suggesting his elevation reflected the specific historical experience and unique trajectory of the Tenochtitlan inhabitants. As the blue Tezcatlipoca within the cosmic order, he profoundly embodied solar energy, the force of warfare, and the unwavering will to overcome obstacles, qualities that resonated deeply with communities who had transformed themselves from marginal outsiders into formidable imperial rulers. Huitzilopochtli's origin story, explored in greater detail in later sections, established him as a warrior from the moment of his birth, emerging fully armed from his mother Coyolxauhqui to defend her against his jealous sister Coyolxauhqui and the 400 southern stars. This inherently martial character made him the perfect patron for a society that increasingly relied on military conquest for its expansion and sustenance. His temple, positioned atop the Templo Mayor, faced south, orienting toward the conquered territories that consistently supplied sacrificial victims to nourish him, thus physically aligning imperial expansion with his divine domain. The terrible one, the awesome one who demands blood and hearts, so described one ancient hymn, highlighting his formidable power and requirements. Yet, despite these fearsome qualities, Huitzilopochtli also profoundly embodied rejuvenation and vital energy. His association with hummingbirds connected him to these remarkable creatures who, like the sun itself, appeared to die each night in torpor, only to revive with remarkable vigor and brilliance each morning. This powerful parallel between the hummingbird's daily revival and the sun's eternal cyclical journey reinforced the fundamental connection between Huitzilopochtli and solar energy. While Huitzilopochtli dominated the official state religion, particularly in military matters, daily life for most people revolved more intimately around the ancient rain deity Tlaloc, whose worship stretched back to Teotihuacan and beyond, signifying his enduring importance. With his distinctive goggle eyes and fanged mouth, Tlaloc controlled the life-giving rains upon which Mesoamerican agriculture fundamentally depended. His vast realm extended to mountains, caves, and springs, all essential sources of water crucial for survival in the Valley of Mexico. Tlaloc commanded both profound reverence and deep terror. His blessing brought abundant crops and fertile harvests, but his anger manifested as devastating drought, destructive floods, or catastrophic hail that could annihilate an entire season's planting. Children sacrificed to him on mountaintops were not considered mere victims, but rather transformed into his cherished helpers, their tears becoming the very rain that nourished the fields below. His own tears were considered precious, falling as life-sustaining rain to humanity. The dual shrine atop the Templo Mayor placed Tlaloc equal in importance to Huitzilopochtli, with his temple facing north toward the mountains where rain clouds traditionally gathered, a symbolic and practical orientation. "Give us not luxury or abundance only," petitioned one prayer to Tlaloc, "but that which is necessary and suitable for us on earth." This humble and practical request reflected the precarious balance of agricultural life, where too much rain could prove as devastating as too little, highlighting the constant dependency on nature's delicate equilibrium. Tlaloc's worship permeated daily existence for farmers throughout the region, with regular offerings made at small shrines near fields and more elaborate ceremonies conducted at specific calendar points, deeply embedding religious practice in the agricultural cycle. Complementing Tlaloc in the agricultural realm stood his consort, Coyolxauhqui, she of the jade skirt, a powerful guardian of terrestrial waters, lakes, and rivers. Where Tlaloc governed falling rain, Coyolxauhqui controlled its gathering and flow across the landscape, managing the collected waters. Her domain held particular significance in the Valley of Mexico, with its extensive lake system upon which Tenochtitlan itself was meticulously built, making her a vital deity for the city's very existence. Every crossing of Lake Texcoco, therefore, required appropriate acknowledgement of her immense power. Coyolxauhqui presided over the fourth sun in cosmic history, which famously ended in a great flood, powerfully demonstrating both her nurturing potential and her formidable destructive capacity. Women in childbirth invoked her protection, as did those washing clothes or gathering water for essential household use. Her association with jade reflected the precious blue-green color of water itself, which was considered the most valuable substance in Mesoamerican aesthetics. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, embodied one of the most ancient and enduring religious concepts in the region, signifying continuity across cultures. As the white Tezcatlipoca within the cosmic structure, he fundamentally represented wisdom, boundless creativity, and profound priestly knowledge. His dual nature, part bird, Quetzal, and part reptile, Coyol, symbolized the profound union of sky and earth, making him a mediating force between cosmic realms. Archaeological evidence from Teotihuacan through the Toltec period consistently shows his continuous significance across centuries and diverse cultures, illustrating his universal appeal. The inventor of the calendar, of books, of ceremonies, declared one account, highlighting Quetzalcoatl's pervasive association with cultural achievements and the foundations of civilization. Beyond these civilizing influences, he played crucial roles in cosmic creation, helping to raise the sky after it collapsed onto the earth, creating humanity from bones retrieved from the underworld, and discovering maize to sustain human life, marking him as a benevolent creator. His temples, often circular rather than rectangular, featured distinctive architectural elements that reflected his unique and multifaceted status as a deity. The complex and often dynamic relationship between Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca established a fundamental creative tension in indigenous theology. These two powerful forces represented complementary yet inherently competing cosmic principles: order versus chaos, stability versus change, reason versus intuition. Their ongoing struggle was understood to drive the cosmic cycles, with either force ever gaining permanent advantage over the other. This delicate balance prevented stagnation while simultaneously avoiding total dissolution, maintaining the dynamic equilibrium absolutely necessary for the ongoing existence of the universe. Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, embodied the most enigmatic and paradoxical qualities in the central Mexican pantheon. As the black Tezcatlipoca within the cosmic order, he represented fate, night, sorcery, and the unseen forces that profoundly shaped human destiny. His name derived from his primary symbol, an obsidian mirror, which both reflected reality and revealed hidden truths, indicating his all-seeing nature. Through this mirror, he observed human actions, intervening unpredictably to test, punish, or occasionally reward individuals based on his enigmatic will. Lord of the near and far, night and wind, he whose slaves we are. These epithets powerfully captured Tezcatlipoca's omnipresent yet elusive nature, emphasizing his control over all aspects of existence. Unlike more specialized divine powers associated with specific natural phenomena, Tezcatlipoca transcended simple categorization. He was a force of pure, unpredictable essence. He could appear in multiple forms, as a jaguar prowling the night, as a young warrior testing human resolve, or as an invisible presence watching from the shadows, demonstrating his protean nature. His worship involved practices of introspection, which were unusual in Mesoamerican religion, including the confession of transgressions to his priests, indicating a unique emphasis on personal accountability. The relationship of common people to Tezcatlipoca differed markedly from their approach to agricultural deities like Tlaloc. While rain guardians received petitions for specific blessings and bountiful harvests, Tezcatlipoca required a profound acknowledgement of human limitations and an acceptance of the inherent unpredictability of fate. Young warriors, for instance, undertook rituals acknowledging that regardless of their skill or courage, their destiny ultimately rested in Tezcatlipoca's hands. This acceptance of life's fundamental uncertainty represented a sophisticated theological position, recognizing forces beyond human control while simultaneously maintaining ethical responsibility and the importance of individual conduct. Among the most visually striking divine beings was Zyptotec, our Lord the Flayed One, who typically manifested as a priest ceremonially wearing the flayed skin of a sacrificial victim. As the red Tezcatlipoca within the cosmic structure, he profoundly governed agricultural fertility, the vital process of seasonal renewal, and the often painful yet ultimately transformative process of new growth. His grotesque appearance, a living being draped in dead human skin, powerfully embodied the core principle that new life and vibrant growth intrinsically emerge only through the death and shedding of the old, a direct parallel to the renewal of the earth. Zyptotec's primary festival, Tlacaxipulizli, the flaying of men, occurred during the critical spring planting season, emphasizing his connection to agricultural cycles. Victims sacrificed to him were flayed, and priests then donned their skins for 20 days, symbolizing the earth donning a new green covering with the arrival of the spring rains. This period marked the crucial transition between the dry and wet seasons, when agricultural success for the entire year literally hung in the balance. Farmers earnestly prayed to Zyptotec for protection from the agricultural diseases that could devastate young maize plants. Make the green maize plants break through. Make the quetzal flowers break through, petitioned one ritual song to Zyptotec, expressing the anxious hope of farmers as they planted their fields. The central metaphor of shedding skin perfectly captured the Mesoamerican agricultural cycle. where fields appeared barren and dead during the dry season before miraculously bursting into vibrant green life with the onset of the rains. Through this powerful and visceral symbolism, Xipe intricately connected human sacrifice to the seasonal rhythms upon which all life and sustenance fundamentally depended. Perhaps the most primordial female force in the indigenous pantheon was Coyolxauhqui, she of the serpent skirt, who profoundly embodied the earth itself in both its nurturing and its devouring aspects, reflecting nature's dualities. Her famous statue from Tenochtitlan reveals a terrifying yet awe-inspiring figure wearing a skirt of writhing serpents, a necklace made of human hearts and hands, and severed snake heads at her waist in place of a head. This striking representation powerfully captured the ancient understanding of the earth as both the ultimate source of all life and the eventual devourer of all beings, in an endless cycle. As the mother of Huitzilopochtli, Coyolxauhqui played a central and pivotal role in the origin story of the Tenochtitlan people, giving divine legitimacy to their very existence. Her miraculous pregnancy through a ball of feathers and subsequent defense by her son established the foundational pattern for their militaristic expansion and the importance of divine protection. Yet, beyond this specific narrative, Coyolxauhqui represented more universal principles of creation and destruction, embodying a powerful feminine generative power that both gives birth to and reclaims its offspring in a perpetual, endless cycle. Coyolxauhqui belonged to a broader group of formidable female deities collectively known as Tito-Inin, Mother of the Gods, or Tozi, our grandmother, who embodied various aspects of feminine creative power. These earth goddesses were intimately connected to both agricultural fertility and human reproduction, forming essential complements to the male deities who often dominated official state religion and public ceremonies. For ordinary households, and especially for women, these feminine divine forces held particular and profound significance in daily ritual practices, guiding domestic life and fertility. The underworld domain fell under the governance of Huitzilopochtli and his formidable female counterpart Huitzilopochtli, the lord and lady of the land of the dead. These skeletal figures presided over Mictlan, the final destination for most human souls, regardless of their earthly status or conduct. Unlike concepts of reward and punishment familiar to European traditions, Mictlan represented a neutral afterlife, with one's destination primarily determined by the manner of death rather than moral behavior or deeds during life. The arduous journey to Mictlan typically took 4 years and required passage through 9 increasingly challenging underworld levels, including a terrifying place where mountains crashed together, a field of obsidian knives, and 8 separate desert and mountain crossings. Only after successfully completing this arduous journey could the soul find final rest in Mictlan's deepest level. Offerings buried with the deceased, including specific breeds of dogs to guide them across the final river, provided crucial assistance for this challenging transition. Despite their fearsome appearance, Huitzilopochtli and Huitzilopochtli were not considered evil or punishing deities, but rather necessary components of the cosmic cycle, fulfilling a vital role in the universe. Their realm formed an essential complement to the world of the living, meticulously maintaining the crucial balance between life and death. During certain festival periods, particularly Toxcatl and the later Days of the Dead, the boundaries between these realms were believed to temporarily dissolve, allowing for sacred communication between the living and their revered ancestors, reinforcing familial and spiritual bonds. Beyond these major divine powers stood hundreds of lesser supernatural beings, each governing specific natural phenomena, occupations, or locations, creating a rich and diverse pantheon. Santiago presided over maize, the fundamental crop of Mesoamerican civilization, embodying its life-sustaining power. Maihil governed the maguey plant, the vital source of the alcoholic pulque, so important in ritual contexts for its intoxicating properties. Paitcatl oversaw medicine and healing, guiding the practices of traditional healers. Each mountain, lake, and spring had its own unique divine guardian, requiring appropriate acknowledgement and reverence when encountered or utilized by humans. This proliferation of specialized divine beings reflected the indigenous tendency towards supernatural differentiation rather than consolidation. Unlike monotheistic systems that unified divine attributes in a single entity, the ancient Mesoamericans recognized precise distinctions between natural processes while acknowledging their profound interconnections. This approach created a remarkably adaptive religious system, capable of incorporating new elements as imperial territories expanded into diverse ecological and cultural regions, demonstrating a flexible and inclusive cosmology. The complex relationship between these myriad divine powers and human beings involved a profound reciprocity rather than a simple, one-sided supplication. The supernatural forces had created the world through immense sacrifice, often involving their own essence. But they, in turn, intrinsically required human offerings and ritual sustenance to maintain their strength and continue their vital functions. This mutual dependence fostered a distinctive religious consciousness where humans actively participated in maintaining cosmic processes, rather than merely petitioning distant powers for favors. Gender complementarity characterized the central Mexican pantheon at multiple levels, reflecting a fundamental aspect of their worldview. Most major divine beings had both male and female aspects or consorts, mirroring the fundamental duality established in the primordial Omedio. Even predominantly masculine forces like Huitzilopochtli incorporated feminine elements in certain ritual contexts, demonstrating a fluidity of gender within the divine. This gender fluidity within the divine echoed the indigenous understanding that cosmic forces transcended simple binary categories, exhibiting multiple aspects depending on context and need. Each divine entity required specific modes of worship appropriate to their unique nature and domain. Huitzilopochtli, for instance, received hearts and blood from sacrificed warriors, a direct offering to his martial and solar nature. Tlaloc, the rain deity, accepted children whose tears were believed to become rain, linking human emotion to natural phenomena. Totec required the wearing of flayed skins, a symbolic act of renewal and rebirth. These specialized ritual practices precisely reflected the particular qualities and domains of each supernatural force, rather than a generic approach to worship. Highlighting the specificity of their religious system, mistakes in ritual procedure were considered dangerous omens, potentially inviting divine displeasure and adverse cosmic consequences rather than blessings, underscoring the importance of precision. For ordinary people, navigating this complex divine hierarchy required lifelong learning and continuous community guidance. From childhood onward, inhabitants received instruction in proper ritual observances for household, occupational, and community deities. Calendar specialists meticulously determined appropriate days for particular activities based on the intricate associations of each day with specific divine forces. This profound integration of religious knowledge into daily life created a society where sacred and secular domains remained inseparable, with every action imbued with spiritual significance. The sophistication of this divine system becomes particularly apparent when examining how the imperial center incorporated deities from conquered regions. Rather than simply imposing their own supernatural beings on subjugated peoples, they skillfully identified points of similarity between local deities and their own expansive pantheon. This created syncretic associations that respected local traditions while subtly subordinating them to the imperial religious structure, fostering a complex integration rather than outright suppression. This religious syncretism facilitated political integration while maintaining theological coherence, creating a more stable and accepting empire. Foreign deities brought to Tenochtitlan received appropriate temples and ritual attention, with their worship supervised by priests familiar with local practices. The conquered deity Xilanen from the southern regions, for example, received a temple near Huitzilopochtli's shrine, acknowledging her importance while carefully placing her within the imperial hierarchy. This strategic approach allowed the Triple Alliance to claim they were not destroying local traditions but honoring them within a more comprehensive and inclusive system. The divine hierarchy of central Mexico thus represented not merely an accumulation of supernatural beings, but a sophisticated theological system expressing fundamental insights about natural processes, intricate social structures, and profound cosmic principles. Through their distinctive combination of ancient Mesoamerican traditions and innovative adaptations, the imperial culture created a religious framework that both explained the universe and profoundly justified their own expansion as the fulfillment of divine will. Among the sacred narratives that defined indigenous identity in the Valley of Mexico, none held greater significance than the miraculous birth of their patron deity, Huitzilopochtli. Unlike the more universal creation narratives shared across broader Mesoamerican cultures, this distinctive account served multiple crucial functions. It established divine legitimacy for militaristic expansion, justified their practices of heart sacrifice, and provided profound cosmic meaning for the architectural layout of their ceremonial center, the Templo Mayor. The dramatic elements of this tale, divine conception, painful family betrayal, heroic birth, and triumphant battle, created a powerful narrative foundation for imperial ideology and instilled a strong sense of divine purpose in the people. The story begins at Coyolxauhqui, Serpent Mountain, a sacred place later replicated symbolically in the Templo Mayor of Tenochtitlan. There lived Coyolxauhqui, she of the serpent skirt, a venerable earth goddess who had already given birth to the moon, stars, and other celestial beings. One day, while sweeping her shrine, Coyolxauhqui encountered a ball of precious feathers floating down from the sky. When she tucked these plumes into her bosom, they mysteriously disappeared, and she found herself miraculously with child. And when her sons and daughters saw that their mother was pregnant, they were very angry, recounts one version recorded after the Spanish conquest. Who has done this to us? Who has brought this shame upon us? The 400 southern stars, known collectively as the Sensen-Huitznawa, led by their formidable sister Coyolxauhqui, she with bells on her cheeks, plotted to kill their mother for this seemingly shameful and unexplained pregnancy. This extreme reaction from Coyolxauhqui's children represented both astronomical phenomena and deep social concerns. Celestially, it depicted the daily defeat of the stars by the rising sun, a recurring cosmic event. Socially, it addressed anxieties about lineage and honor, which were central to noble families and societal structure. The apparent dishonor of an unexplained pregnancy was transformed, through divine intervention, into the highest possible honor, creating a powerful narrative inversion that reinforced the special and chosen status of the Tenochtitlan inhabitants as a people divinely favored. As the celestial siblings meticulously prepared their attack, the unborn Huitzilopochtli spoke from within his mother's womb, reassuring her. "Have no fear, mother. I know what I must do." This divine foreknowledge established Huitzilopochtli's character as a preordained strategist and protector from before his very birth, emphasizing his inherent power and destiny. When the moment of confrontation arrived, the pregnant Coyolxauhqui courageously climbed Coyolxauhqui to face her murderous offspring, signifying a place of sacred combat. The dramatic birth unfolded with supernatural speed and martial perfection. Just as the star beings approached to kill their mother, Huitzilopochtli emerged fully grown and armed for battle. His formidable arsenal included the Zyacotl, or fire serpent, a powerful spear thrower capable of emitting destructive flames, and a shield meticulously adorned with eagle feathers, symbolizing his solar and martial power. His face and limbs bore distinctive blue stripes, and a hummingbird headdress crowned his head, visually linking him to the vibrant, agile bird. And immediately he pierced Coyolxauhqui, and then quickly struck off her head, states the account preserved in the Florentine Codex. It came to rest at the edge of Coyolxauhqui. After decapitating his sister, Huitzilopochtli relentlessly pursued the 400 brothers who fled in terror. Despite their desperate attempts to escape, he hunted them across the heavens, slaying most and forcing the few survivors to scatter to the southern sky, forever diminishing their celestial prominence. This cosmic battle established several crucial and enduring patterns for Central Mexican religious practice. The resounding defeat of the moon, Coyolxauhqui, and the stars, Sensen-Huitznawa, by the newborn son, Huitzilopochtli, visually represented the daily celestial drama observable to all. A constant reaffirmation of the sun's triumph. The decapitation of Coyolxauhqui and the dismemberment of her brothers established the profound pattern for the offering rituals that would feed the sun deity with human hearts and blood. Understood as vital nourishment for cosmic continuation. The victorious protection of the mother goddess, Coyolxauhqui, justified the self-image of Tenochtitlan's people as vigilant defenders of cosmic order against the forces of chaos and destruction. The Templo Mayor physically embodied this foundational narrative through its meticulous architectural symbolism. The temple platform itself represented Coyolxauhqui, with the shrine to Huitzilopochtli at its summit marking the precise location of his miraculous birth. At the very base of the main staircase lay the massive stone relief of the dismembered Coyolxauhqui, strategically positioned so that the decapitated goddess eternally lay at the foot of her victorious brother's temple, a perpetual reminder of his triumph. The placement of Coyolxauhqui at the bottom of the staircase, notes one archaeological analysis, suggests that her stone symbolized her defeat, with the temple pyramid representing Coyolxauhqui. This three-dimensional recreation of the cosmic battle transformed ritual activities at the Templo Mayor into direct and active participation in the founding narrative. When sacrificial victims' hearts were extracted and their bodies ritually tumbled down the temple stairs onto the Coyolxauhqui stone, the mythic combat between Huitzilopochtli and his siblings was dramatically and powerfully reenacted, imbuing the act with profound spiritual meaning. The temporal setting of this story carried particular significance for indigenous identity. Unlike the primordial creation accounts or the distant history of previous cosmic ages, Huitzilopochtli's birth occurred specifically during the current fifth sun. This positioned their patron deity, and by extension the people themselves, as relative newcomers with a specific cosmic mission, rather than generalized inheritors of an ancient tradition. Their special and direct relationship with Huitzilopochtli gave them a unique responsibility for maintaining the current world age through proper ceremonial observance and the provision of vital nourishment. Imperial expansion therefore gained profound theological justification through this narrative. If Huitzilopochtli required human hearts and blood to maintain his cosmic struggle against darkness and chaos, then military campaigns aimed at securing sacrificial victims represented a sacred necessity rather than mere political ambition. The Flowery Wars, conducted specifically to capture warriors for sacrifice, directly connected to this foundation story, with captives representing the defeated star deities whose life force would nourish the triumphant sun god. The hummingbird symbolism, intricately associated with Huitzilopochtli, carried multiple layers of profound meaning. These tiny birds were renowned for their fierce aggression despite their diminutive size. Much like the Tenochtitlan society had risen from modest beginnings to imperial dominance through unwavering will, hummingbirds in Mesoamerica were also strongly associated with the souls of fallen warriors, establishing a direct connection between military service and divine essence. Their annual migration patterns directly paralleled the sun's movements, reinforcing Huitzilopochtli's solar associations and his cyclical nature. For ordinary citizens, this founding narrative provided both inspiration and solemn caution. The miraculous conception through feathers suggested the possibility of divine intervention in seemingly impossible circumstances, a powerful message of hope for a people who had transformed themselves from despised outsiders into imperial rulers through sheer determination and divine favor. Simultaneously, the brutal fate of those who oppose divine will serve as a stark warning against challenging established authority, with the dismembered Coyolxauhqui a permanent, visible reminder to all who approach the Templo Mayor of the consequences of disobedience. The gendered aspects of this narrative also deserve particular attention. Though Huitzilopochtli dominated as the masculine warrior, his immense power derived directly from his mother Coyolxauhqui, whose own ancient and profound divine status preceded his very existence. This maternal foundation for patriarchal authority reflected broader patterns in central Mexican society, where male rulers often legitimized their position through female lineage connections. acknowledging the importance of both male and female principles. The creative tension between masculine and feminine principles permeated both sacred stories and social organization, mirroring the inherent duality of the cosmos itself. The narrative's celestial symbolism contained sophisticated astronomical observations. The conflict between Huitzilopochtli, the sun, and his siblings, the moon and stars, accurately depicted the daily disappearance of stars as the sun rises, a constant cosmic battle. The image of dismembered bodies scattered across the sky corresponded to the Milky Way's appearance as a band of fragmented light, showing a remarkable blend of myth and observation. These astronomical correlations embedded scientific understanding within religious frameworks, demonstrating the practical knowledge that underpinned indigenous cosmology. Variations of this account existed across different communities within the imperial realm, with local adaptations emphasizing particular elements relevant to specific social contexts. In regions focusing on agricultural production rather than military activity, versions highlighting fertility aspects received greater emphasis. In areas directly engaged in imperial expansion, the martial elements of the story dominated, shaping its interpretation. This flexibility allowed the central narrative to function effectively across diverse social environments, while consistently maintaining its core symbolism and reinforcing central tenets. Archaeological evidence suggests the story itself evolved over time, with earlier versions placing less emphasis on militaristic elements. As the Tenochtitlan community transitioned from marginalized newcomers to powerful imperial rulers, the warrior aspects of Huitzilopochtli gained progressively greater prominence in official narratives, reflecting the changing needs of state ideology. This evolution demonstrated how spiritual symbolism could adapt to political circumstances without abandoning its fundamental structure or core meaning. The Coyolxauhqui stone itself, dramatically discovered in 1978 during excavations near Mexico City's cathedral, provides tangible and undeniable evidence of the narrative's central importance. This massive circular relief, measuring over 3.25 meters in diameter, depicts the dismembered goddess with her head, limbs, and torso separated yet arranged in a flowing, almost dance-like composition. The artistic sophistication of this monumental carving reveals both profound theological complexity and refined aesthetic artistry, challenging simplistic views of indigenous religion as merely bloodthirsty or primitive. Tribute payments from conquered territories often specifically included materials required for rituals honoring Huitzilopochtli, such as quetzal feathers, jade, and specialized ceremonial implements. These requirements established direct and intrinsic connections between imperial economic systems and religious observances. The flow of luxury goods toward Tenochtitlan's ceremonial center physically embodied the cosmic order depicted in the founding narrative, with peripheral regions supporting the sacred center. Just as the defeated star deities ultimately served the triumphant sun god. For warriors, the story of Huitzilopochtli provided both powerful inspiration and ultimate purpose. Success in battle represented not merely personal glory or material gain, but direct participation in cosmic maintenance, a sacred duty. The capture of sacrificial victims fulfilled the highest possible calling, feeding the patron deity who sustained the current world age. This sacred framing transformed military service from a mere profession into a divine vocation, with eternal rewards awaiting those who fell bravely in battle, ensuring a glorious afterlife. When the Spanish arrived in 1519, this foundational narrative profoundly influenced indigenous responses to the unprecedented challenge they presented. The complex prophecies regarding Quetzalcoatl's return became entangled with observations of these strange newcomers, creating profound ambiguity about appropriate action. Yet, throughout the initial encounters, the Tenochtitlan leadership meticulously maintained their ritual obligations to Huitzilopochtli, continuing sacrificial practices even as their world faced fundamental and existential disruption. The national story of Huitzilopochtli's birth thus served multiple crucial functions. It explained celestial phenomena, justified sacrificial practices, legitimized imperial expansion, and provided profound cosmic meaning for the historical experience of central Mexico's dominant power. Through a sophisticated integration of astronomical observation, political necessity, and religious symbolism, this narrative created a powerful ideological foundation for one of Mesoamerica's most complex civilizations. The Central Mexican understanding of human origins differed profoundly from creation accounts familiar to European traditions. Rather than emerging from clay shaped by divine hands or through divine breath, humans came into being through a more complex and arduous process involving cosmic sacrifice, perilous underworld journeys, and divine blood offerings. This unique creation account established fundamental patterns that would echo throughout indigenous ritual practice, particularly in their approaches to death, sacrifice, and rebirth, shaping their worldview. After previous failed attempts to create suitable inhabitants for the newly formed earth, the divine powers gathered in council at Teotihuacan to determine how to create beings who could properly venerate and sustain them. These supernatural forces recognized that without humans to provide offerings, the cosmic order itself could not be maintained, as there would be no source of the vital energy the gods required. This reciprocal relationship between humanity and divinity, each requiring the other for continued existence, formed a cornerstone of Mesoamerican theological understanding, emphasizing mutual dependence. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, associated with knowledge and creativity, bravely volunteered to undertake the dangerous journey to Mictlan, the deepest level of the underworld, to retrieve the precious bones of previous human inhabitants who had perished in earlier cosmic ages. This perilous descent into the realm of death required both immense courage and cunning, as Mictlantecuhtli, the formidable lord of the dead, jealously guarded these remains. "I have come for the precious bones that you keep," Quetzalcoatl declared, as recounted in one version preserved in the Leyenda de los Sols. "I have come to take them." This bold declaration initiated a complex contest of wits between the Creator and the Underworld Lord, establishing a recurring pattern of divine trickery that would appear repeatedly in Mesoamerican sacred narratives, demonstrating that wisdom and cunning were as valued as strength. Mictlantecuhtli, suspicious of Quetzalcoatl's intentions, reluctantly agreed to surrender the bones only if the Creator could complete a series of seemingly impossible tasks, designed to deter him. One version describes how Mictlantecuhtli demanded that Quetzalcoatl circle the underworld 4 times while blowing a conch shell with no openings. Through divine ingenuity and resourcefulness, Quetzalcoatl summoned worms to bore holes in the shell and bees to make it sound, successfully completing the challenging task. Despite fulfilling these requirements, Quetzalcoatl faced further obstacles, as Mictlantecuhtli was not easily defeated. Mictlantecuhtli ordered his servants to dig a deep pit, then invited Quetzalcoatl to descend and retrieve the bones. When the Creator descended into the pit, a flock of quail was intentionally released to startle him, causing him to fall and scatter the precious remains, adding another layer of difficulty. In some versions of the story, the quail also bit and damaged the bones, which served as a mythological explanation for why modern humans have varying heights and builds rather than uniform dimensions, accounting for human diversity. This setback, however, did not deter the determined Quetzalcoatl, who meticulously gathered the scattered bones into a bundle and began his escape from the treacherous underworld. Realizing he had been deceived by Quetzalcoatl's cleverness, Mictlantecuhtli immediately ordered his underworld servants to pursue the fleeing Creator and reclaim the bones. Different accounts describe various ingenious strategies Quetzalcoatl employed to evade capture, such as running in zigzag patterns, creating diversions, or summoning other creatures to block his relentless pursuers, highlighting his resourcefulness and cunning. Upon successfully returning to the earthly realm with his precious cargo, Quetzalcoatl brought the bones to Cihuatcoatl, the snake woman, who meticulously ground them into a fine powder using a sacred grinding stone, strikingly similar to those used by women to process maize for daily sustenance. This parallel between creating humans and preparing corn reinforced the special and intimate relationship between people and their staple crop. Indeed, Many indigenous groups referred to themselves as people of the maize, profoundly recognizing that their very substance shared common origins with their primary food source. The crucial and transformative moment of animation came when multiple divine beings, including Quetzalcoatl himself, pierced their earlobes and genitals to drip their sacred blood onto the ground bone powder, giving it life. And with their blood, they moistened the ashes, states one account. Then humans began to live. This profound act of divine bloodletting established the fundamental pattern for human auto-sacrifice, the ritual bloodletting from ears, tongues, and other body parts that formed a core element of indigenous religious practice, understood as a sacred duty. This creation through divine sacrifice established a profound theological principle. Life emerges only through blood offering. Just as the supernatural powers had sacrificed their own precious blood to create humanity, humans would now be expected to offer blood back to their creators to maintain cosmic order and the delicate balance of existence. The reciprocal relationship between divine and human realms, each sustaining the other through a sacred exchange of blood, created a sophisticated theological framework that profoundly justified sacrificial practices as a necessary and vital part of the universe. Several distinctive features of this creation account deserve particular attention and highlight its unique qualities. Unlike creation narratives that emphasize the fashioning of individuals, this version describes the simultaneous creation of multiple humans from the collective bones of ancestors. This communal origin reflected the indigenous emphasis on collective identity over individual distinction, with persons understood primarily through their intricate relationships to family, community, and the broader cosmic order. The role of bones as the enduring substance of humanity carried profound implications for understanding death and the afterlife. Bones represented the most permanent aspect of human existence, outlasting perishable flesh and continuing to exist long after physical death. This perspective influenced mortuary practices, with many commoners cremated to release the soul, while nobles might have their bones preserved as sacred relics, maintaining vital connections to ancestral power and lineage. The participation of multiple divine beings in human creation established humanity's diverse and interconnected connections to supernatural powers. Rather than belonging exclusively to a single creator, humans owed their existence to collective divine action and therefore had obligations to the broader pantheon. Different aspects of human nature were believed to reflect the very divine energies that had contributed to their animation, Quetzalcoatl providing wisdom, Tezcatlipoca granting vital force, and other deities contributing specific qualities and attributes. Physical and temperamental differences among humans were explained through variations in the recovered bones and the specific mixture of divine blood used in their animation. Some accounts describe how damaged or incomplete bones resulted in individuals with physical limitations, while others suggest that the predominance of particular divine blood determined personality traits, offering a complex explanation for human diversity within a unified origin. This framework explained human diversity while meticulously maintaining the fundamental unity of human origins. For agricultural communities throughout Mesoamerica, this creation account resonated deeply with their daily experience of plant cultivation. Just as humans emerged from seemingly dead bones mixed with vitalizing blood, maize plants grew from apparently lifeless seeds nourished by water and human labor. This profound parallel between human and agricultural creation reinforced the sacred nature of farming activities, transforming the planting cycle into a ritualized reenactment of human origins, imbuing daily work with cosmic significance. The underworld journey element of this narrative established important patterns for understanding death and the afterlife. Quetzalcoatl's successful navigation of Mictlan demonstrated that the realm of death, while dangerous and challenging, was not impenetrable. This created hope for ordinary people that their deceased relatives might similarly find pathways through the arduous obstacles of the afterlife journey, particularly if provided with proper ritual assistance through funerary offerings, which were deemed essential for the soul's passage. Social stratification within indigenous society also gained mythological justification through elaborations of this creation account. Some versions describe how bones from different social classes in previous cosmic ages were used to create corresponding classes in the current world, explaining inequality as a continuation of established cosmic patterns rather than arbitrary human arrangements. Noble lineages claimed descent from bones of previous rulers, while commoners originated from those of ordinary people, providing a mythological basis for social hierarchy. Language diversity received similar explanation through variations of this mythology. Some accounts describe how different groups received unique languages during or shortly after creation, explaining the linguistic diversity encountered by the imperial center during their expansion. This framework allowed acknowledgement of cultural differences while maintaining a unified understanding of fundamental human origins. The grinding of bones on a stone before animation connected human creation to female domestic labor, recognizing women's essential contribution to sustaining life. Just as women transformed hard corn kernels into nourishing dough through grinding and cooking, the female deity Huitzilopochtli transformed inert bones into the substance of humanity through sacred processing. This acknowledgement of feminine creative power balanced the predominantly masculine emphasis in other aspects of official religious practice, highlighting a comprehensive worldview. Archaeological evidence from excavated temple offerings in Tenochtitlan reveals the ongoing ritual significance of this creation narrative. Buried deposits often included carefully arranged human bones mixed with sacrificial blood, physically reenacting the original creation process, bringing myth into tangible form. Some offerings meticulously featured bones adorned with precious materials like jade, powerfully symbolizing the valuable substance from which humanity emerged, reflecting the preciousness of human life. These tangible expressions unequivocally demonstrate how creation accounts directly and profoundly influenced ritual practice. The imagery of bone and blood permeated artistic conventions throughout central Mexico. Skeletal figures appeared frequently in sculpture and painted manuscripts, not merely as symbols of death, but as powerful representations of the enduring substance from which life emerges, emphasizing cyclical existence. The juxtaposition of skeletal elements with flowing blood or flourishing vegetation visually captured the theological understanding that death and life form inseparable aspects of a continuous cycle, rather than absolute opposites, reflecting a holistic view of reality. The theme of divine trickery in acquiring materials for human creation established important precedents for cultural attitudes toward cunning and deception. Unlike some traditions that condemn trickery as inherently immoral, indigenous philosophy recognized strategic deception as sometimes necessary for achieving worthy goals and overcoming obstacles. Quetzalcoatl's clever deception of Huitzilopochtli justified similar approaches in circumstances where direct confrontation might prove impossible or unwise for ordinary community members, providing a pragmatic ethical framework. This creation account provided both explanation and prescription. It explained human mortality by locating human origins in materials already associated with death, the bones of previous inhabitants recovered from the underworld. Simultaneously, it prescribed proper behavior through establishing the pattern of blood offering as fundamental to existence, a necessary act of reciprocity. Even the simplest household rituals involving minor bloodletting connected directly to this cosmic precedent, embedding profound meaning in daily life. The agricultural deity Centiatl, the maize lord, gained special prominence through associations with this creation narrative. Just as humans were created from ground bones mixed with divine blood, maize emerged from seemingly dead seeds mixed with water and human labor, creating a powerful parallel. Rituals honoring Centiatl often involved symbolic reenactments of the human creation story, reinforcing the profound connection between people and their primary food source, emphasizing their shared origins. When the Spanish arrived and introduced Christian creation accounts, the profound differences in understanding human origins created significant barriers to mutual comprehension and exacerbated cultural misunderstandings. The European emphasis on humans fashioned individually from clay by a singular deity contrasted sharply with the indigenous understanding of communal creation from ancestral bones through cooperative divine action. This conceptual gap contributed significantly to the broader cultural misunderstandings that would characterize the conquest period, leading to conflict and misinterpretation. The Mesoamerican understanding of human creation established humans not as the masters of creation, but as participants in an ongoing cosmic process requiring consistent maintenance through ritual action, created through divine sacrifice. Humans existed primarily to sustain the supernatural beings who had brought them into being, completing a reciprocal cycle of mutual dependence. This perspective fostered a distinctive consciousness where personal existence derived meaning primarily through participation in maintaining universal order, rather than through individual achievement or salvation, emphasizing a communal and cosmic purpose. The daily spectacle of the sun's rise and the moon's appearance captivated observers across all ancient civilizations. But few cultures developed explanations as elaborate or consequential as those of central Mexico. Their understanding of celestial motion centered on a narrative of voluntary divine sacrifice that established the fundamental pattern for all subsequent ritual bloodletting. This account of cosmic creation through self-offering provided both a profound explanation for natural phenomena and a powerful justification for the most contested aspects of indigenous religious practice, particularly human sacrifice. After the great flood that ended the fourth sun, the world lay shrouded in profound darkness. The supernatural powers gathered at Teotihuacan, already an ancient and sacred place, to determine who would take on the tremendous responsibility of becoming the new sun, the giver of light and life. This divine council recognized that creating light required ultimate sacrifice. The chosen deity would need to immolate himself completely to generate the cosmic fire necessary for life to continue. Two volunteers stepped forward, Tequisistecatl, a wealthy and proud being adorned with precious offerings, and Nanahuatzin, a humble deity covered in sores, whose name literally means, full of sores, or the pimpled one. This pairing established a powerful pattern of contrast between outward magnificence and inner humility, a theme that would resonate throughout native moral teaching, emphasizing the importance of genuine worth over superficial appearances. The divine assembly meticulously prepared a great bonfire that burned for 4 days, creating the sacred flames into which the chosen one would bravely leap. They made 2 mounds, recounts the Leyenda de los Sols, and for 4 days the gods did penance. This preparatory period established the pattern for human penitential practices before major ritual observations, emphasizing the importance of purification and self-denial. When the momentous occasion of sacrifice arrived, Tequisistecatl, despite his grandiose preparations and expensive offerings, hesitated before the scorching flames. 4 times he bravely approached the fire, and 4 times his courage failed him, revealing his underlying fear. Seeing this hesitation, the humble Nanahuatzin stepped forward with quiet determination and immense resolve. After closing his eyes, at once he cast himself into the fire, states one account. Immediately his body crackled and sizzled. This act of complete self-sacrifice, performed without a moment's hesitation, established a fundamental theological principle. Divine power emerges not from outward appearance or material wealth, but from an inner commitment to cosmic necessity, a profound willingness to serve. Shamed by Nanahuatzin's incredible courage and selflessness, Tequisistecatl finally, reluctantly, threw himself into the flames as well. From these twin sacrifices emerged the primary celestial bodies. Nanahuatzin, the humble one, transformed into the radiant sun, while Tequisistecatl, the proud one, became the paler moon. Their different characters beautifully explain the distinctive qualities of these celestial bodies, the sun's brilliant, life-giving radiance contrasting with the moon's paler, reflected light, illustrating their differing origins. The newly created sun, however, remained stubbornly stationary in the eastern sky, despite his transformation. Nanahuatzin lacked the inherent energy to begin his vital journey across the heavens. The cosmos faced a critical moment of inertia. Without the sun's movement, life on Earth could not be sustained. This profound crisis required further divine intervention to establish the dynamic equilibrium necessary for continued existence. Recognizing this cosmic necessity and the impending universal stasis, the other divine beings made the momentous decision to sacrifice themselves as well, providing their collective life force to set the sun in motion. "How will we live?" they anxiously asked. "The sun does not move." Each deity courageously approached the sacrificial position, willingly offering their sacred life energy to generate the necessary dynamism for the cosmos to continue. The god Ehecatl, wind, blew with all his mighty strength, finally pushing the sun into its orbital motion across the sky. "And thus the gods died for the sun to live and move," states one account. "Thus was established their precious merit, because they died so that the sun might live." This profound collective divine sacrifice established the fundamental principle underlying all native ritual. Cosmic motion and the continuation of life required continuous blood offering. This divine precedent, deeply embedded in their creation myth, created the theological foundation for human sacrificial practices. Just as the supernatural powers had offered their blood and lives to sustain cosmic motion at the beginning of the fifth sun, humans now bore the sacred responsibility for continuing this essential nourishment through their own blood offerings, thereby ensuring the universe's continuity. The origin of the moon's distinctive features also received particular explanation in this narrative. When both celestial bodies first appeared in the sky, they shone with equal brightness, creating confusion and an undesirable cosmic imbalance. They, the gods, all came together and said, "How will it be, gods? Will they both follow the same path and be equally bright?" To resolve this problem and establish proper cosmic order, one of the supernatural beings struck Tequisiztecattl's face with a rabbit, permanently dimming his brightness and leaving the impression of a rabbit visible on the moon's surface, an image still recognized by many indigenous communities today. This account of the sun and moon's creation through divine sacrifice contains sophisticated astronomical understanding beneath its mythological framework. The pre-conquest peoples recognized that the sun provided active, powerful light, while the moon merely reflected solar radiance. A profound principle encoded in the narrative of Tequisiztecattl's diminishment. Similarly, the east-to-west movement of these celestial bodies received explanation through the immense divine effort required to initiate cosmic motion, rather than attributing movement to the bodies themselves, highlighting the active participation of deities in natural phenomena. For temple priests, who were meticulously responsible for calendar observations and astronomical tracking, this creation story provided essential context for their daily work. The precise tracking of solar and lunar movements, crucial for agricultural planning and ritual scheduling, gained profound cosmic significance from the understanding that these celestial bodies represented transformed deities, living manifestations of divine sacrifice. Calendar priests did not merely record natural phenomena, they maintained direct connections with the divine beings whose ultimate sacrifice had made life possible and continued to sustain it. The voluntary nature of the original divine sacrifice carried particular importance for indigenous understanding of their own ritual practices. Just as Nanahuatzin had willingly and courageously entered the flames, sacrificial participants ideally accepted their fate as a profound participation in cosmic maintenance, rather than merely an act of elimination. This theological perspective helps explain certain aspects of sacrificial procedures, including the careful preparation of participants and the emphasis on their ritual involvement before the culminating moment, transforming their death into a sacred act. The sun's daily journey acquired additional elaboration as native thought developed and became more complex. After traveling across the sky during daylight hours, the sun deity descended into the western entrance to the underworld each evening. Throughout the night, he tirelessly traveled through 9 challenging underworld levels, battling formidable forces of darkness and death. This nightly combat explained why the sun needed constant nourishment through blood offering. His strength required replenishment for each night's arduous ordeal, ensuring his ability to rise again. Particular festivals in the native calendar directly commemorated aspects of this creation narrative. The Vaintina, 20-day period, called Titidal, featured a ceremony where selected individuals climbed tall poles and cast themselves down on ropes, symbolically reenacting Nanahuatzin's sacrificial leap into the cosmic fire. These performances physically embodied the mythological precedent, allowing participants and observers to profoundly reconnect with the foundational moment of the current cosmic age, bringing the myth to life. The contrasting characters of Tequisistecatl and Nanahuatzin provided a rich moral framework with significant social implications. Tequisistecatl represented the wealthy nobility, with their elaborate offerings and outward magnificence, emphasizing material wealth. In contrast, Nanahuatzin embodied humbler classes whose inner qualities might exceed their material resources and social standing. This pairing suggested that true worth emerged from a profound willingness to serve cosmic necessity, from inner commitment, rather than from social position or material wealth. A potentially subversive message within the highly stratified indigenous society. Agricultural cycles gained particular significance through association with this solar mythology. The daily death of the sun at dusk and its glorious rebirth at dawn directly paralleled the seasonal patterns of planting, growth, harvest, and fallow periods. Farmers throughout central Mexico understood their work as active participation in the same cosmic processes represented in the sun's movements, imbuing their labor with sacred meaning. This profound connection between celestial mythology and agricultural practice embedded cosmic significance in daily labor and the very sustenance of life. While this celestial narrative provided a comprehensive framework for understanding cosmic processes, the ancient peoples of Mexico developed equally sophisticated explanations for the internal human experience. Their understanding of human spirituality transcended simplistic notions of a single unified soul. Instead, their sophisticated conception divided the life essence into multiple components, each with distinct qualities, origins, and unique destinies. Chief among these were the tonali, a person's vital force and destiny, the teolia, the divine spark centered in the heart, and the hydal, the breath or vital energy. This complex model created a nuanced framework for understanding human existence that profoundly influenced everything from child-rearing practices to elaborate funeral rituals, touching every aspect of life. The tonali represented perhaps the most distinctive aspect of indigenous spiritual understanding, this life essence, whose name derives from the word for day or heat, entered a child at birth, determining many fundamental aspects of their character and fate. The specific day on which someone was born established the inherent qualities of their personal force, creating a direct and unbreakable connection between the intricate calendar system and individual identity. The day count gives people their shadow, explains one indigenous account. It makes them cry. It makes them laugh. It gives them their character, whether good or bad. This intrinsic connection between identity and cosmic time created a distinctive consciousness where personhood itself emerged from positioning within sacred patterns, rather than solely from individual autonomy or personal achievement, emphasizing cosmic interconnectedness. This day-linked essence resided primarily in the head, particularly concentrated in the hair, which the ancient people considered a physical manifestation of this vital spiritual force. This belief profoundly influenced numerous cultural practices, including distinctive hairstyles that meticulously marked social status and significant life stages. Warriors who captured enemies in battle earned the right to specific protective hairstyles, symbolizing their prowess, while priests maintained special hair arrangements appropriate to their sacred spiritual responsibilities and roles. Unlike the Western concept of an immortal, unchanging soul, the tonali, vital energy, could temporarily leave the body during sleep, intoxication, sexual activity, or illness, making individuals vulnerable. Dreams, for example, represented the tonali's wanderings beyond the body, potentially gaining hidden knowledge or encountering dangers during its nocturnal journeys through the spiritual realm. This understanding created particular concern about proper sleeping arrangements, as a disoriented tonali might enter the wrong body upon awakening or become trapped in the spiritual realm, leading to misfortune. The vulnerability of this personal essence necessitated numerous protective practices, particularly for infants whose newly acquired vital energy had not yet firmly attached to their physical form. Newborns received special amulets and protective hairstyles, while parents carefully monitored their sleeping environments to prevent spiritual disruption. The risk of losing or damaging the head-centered force also explained many childhood illnesses within native medical frameworks, with specialized healers developing techniques to retrieve or strengthen weakened vital energy, highlighting a holistic approach to health. Solar connections permeated the understanding of this spiritual component, as it was conceived as a tiny fragment of solar energy individuated within each person, linking individual existence to the cosmos. This solar association directly connected individual identity to the broader cosmic processes described in solar creation mythology. Just as the sun required blood nourishment to maintain its strength and continue its journey, individual life essence needed periodic strengthening through appropriate offerings and ritual observance, emphasizing human participation in cosmic sustenance. The calendar priest, or Tanalpuki, day counter, played an essential role in society through their unique ability to interpret the birthdate implications for each person. When a child arrived, parents consulted these specialists to determine the qualities associated with their offspring's day sign and received profound guidance for appropriate rituals, educational approaches, and potential career paths. This practice deeply embedded individual destiny within cosmic patterns, discernible through proper calendrical knowledge. When a child was born, they immediately consulted the day-counting book, states one account preserved after the conquest. If the child came into the world on a good day sign, they baptized it then. But if it was born on an evil day sign, they waited. This careful attention to auspicious timing demonstrates how thoroughly calendrical consciousness permeated even the most intimate family moments, with cosmic patterns influencing every significant life transition, from birth to death. Complementing the tonali concept stood the Nawali, or animal coessence, a spiritual connection between humans and specific animal species that profoundly influenced character, abilities, and destiny. Unlike the day-linked essence, which related primarily to cosmic time, the Nawali established intricate connections between human society and the broader natural world. This profound relationship manifested in multiple forms, from spiritual guardianship to potential shape-shifting abilities, demonstrating a permeable boundary between human and animal realms. In its most common form, the Nawali functioned as a spirit-animal guardian assigned at birth, creating a lifelong bond between person and animal species. The specific Nawali might be determined through birth circumstances, dream revelations, or distinctive physical marks on the infant, making it a highly personal connection. This connection created mutual influence. The animal's characteristics shaped human personality, while the person's actions could affect their animal counterparts' well-being. The child receives the animal's shadow, notes one indigenous source. If the animal is injured, the child suffers the same wound. This reciprocal vulnerability fostered a profound sense of connection to the natural world, with personal well-being explicitly linked to the health of specific animal species. Conservation practices and hunting restrictions often reflected these spiritual associations, rather than merely practical concerns about resource management, showing a deeply spiritual approach to nature. More specialized manifestations of the Nawali concept applied to individuals with particular spiritual talents or ritual responsibilities. Shamanic practitioners developed the extraordinary ability to temporarily transform into their Nawali animal, their vital essence transferring into their animal counterpart. These transformative capacities facilitated spiritual journeys, healing practices, or community protection. Nighttime sounds of howling coyotes or screeching owls might be interpreted as such practitioners moving through the darkness in animal form, engaging in their sacred duties. For native rulers and priests, the Nawali connection offered enhanced spiritual authority. The ability to access animal consciousness provided valuable knowledge unavailable through ordinary human perception, giving them unique insights. Dreams in which one's Nawali appeared carried special significance, often interpreted as direct divine communication or a vital warning, guiding their actions. This intimate connection between human and animal realms created a religious consciousness where boundaries between species remained permeable rather than absolute, reflecting a fluid and interconnected universe. The third major spiritual component in indigenous understanding, the Teolia, was centered in the heart and represented the divine spark within each person. This spiritual essence connected most directly to the divine realm and determined whether individuals acted with moral integrity or succumbed to base impulses, forming the basis of their ethical framework. Unlike the tonali, which could temporarily leave during sleep, the Teolia remained firmly within the body until death, departing only during the heart extraction that formed the culminating moment in sacrificial rituals, highlighting its sacred importance. The heart is the precious stone, the Quetzal feather, declares one poetic fragment, profoundly highlighting the Teolia's precious and sacred nature. This spiritual essence continued existence after death, undertaking the challenging journey through the 9 levels of Mictlan, the underworld, before reaching its final destination. Proper funeral rituals meticulously aided this journey, with specific offerings provided to help the Teolia overcome obstacles during its 4-year transition to final rest. The final major spiritual component, the Hydel or breath, represented vital energy centered in the liver. This essence was intimately related to emotional states and personal character, manifesting physically as a particular odor believed to emanate from individuals. A virtuous person was believed to produce pleasing aromas through their Hydel, while those with negative character traits emitted noxious scents, perceptible to spiritually sensitive individuals. This belief influenced social interactions, personal hygiene practices, and the ceremonial use of aromatic substances in ritual contexts, imbuing everyday life with spiritual significance. This sophisticated, multi-part understanding of human spirituality created a distinctive indigenous perspective on personhood, rather than conceiving individuals as unified entities with clear, fixed boundaries. They recognized multiple interconnected components operating according to different principles. The permeability of these spiritual essences, their ability to temporarily depart, strengthen, weaken, or transform, created a consciousness where personhood itself existed as a dynamic process rather than a fixed state, emphasizing constant change and potential for flux. For ordinary families, this spiritual framework influenced countless daily practices and rituals. Parents carefully guarded children's hair, since it contained concentrated vital energy, tonali, reflecting a protective instinct. Sweeping had to be performed with attention to proper timing to avoid disturbing wandering life essences, integrating spiritual considerations into mundane tasks. Illness required both physical treatment and spiritual intervention to retrieve lost soul components or strengthen damaged spiritual forces, demonstrating a holistic approach to well-being. These practical applications deeply embedded theological understanding in routine household activities, making the sacred a part of the everyday. The sophisticated spiritual system of ancient Mexico thus addressed both grand cosmic processes through celestial mythology and individual human experience through multi-part soul concepts. These frameworks provided comprehensive explanations for observed phenomena while establishing patterns for proper ritual response. By connecting solar movement to sacrificial necessity and individual identity to cosmic time through birthdate significance, this theological system integrated personal experience with universal processes in a remarkably sophisticated framework that guided daily practice while profoundly explaining the fundamental nature of existence itself. The natural world occupied a position of profound religious significance within ancient Mesoamerican thought, with particular plants and animals embodying divine powers, cosmic principles, and intricate historical relationships. Far from mere resources to be exploited, these living entities functioned as powerful manifestations of sacred forces, whose proper understanding proved essential for spiritual and physical well-being. The careful observation of animal behavior and plant characteristics revealed divine patterns otherwise invisible, creating a worldview where natural and supernatural realms remained inseparably intertwined, existing as a continuous whole. Perhaps no animal held greater symbolic significance than the eagle, whose powerful presence marked the culmination of the indigenous migration saga. According to Foundation mythology, the wandering tribe received divine instruction to establish their city where they witnessed an eagle perched on a cactus with a serpent in its beak or talons. This pivotal vision, eventually encountered on a small island in Lake Texcoco, determined the precise location of Tenochtitlan and provided the emblematic image still prominently featured on the Mexican flag today, representing national identity. The eagle's symbolism extended far beyond this foundational narrative. As a solar bird capable of flying directly toward the sun while hunting, the eagle represented warrior virtues, celestial connections, and the power of light. Elite warriors could earn membership in the prestigious Eagle Warrior Society through battlefield achievements, earning the right to wear elaborate eagle costumes during ceremonial occasions, visually embodying their divine connection. The eagle's distinctive hunting behaviors, patient observation followed by decisive strikes, provided powerful models for military strategy and leadership qualities, reflecting a pragmatic application of natural observation. The eagle is wise and vigilant, notes one indigenous text. It watches from high places and strikes when enemies least expect. This keen observation of natural behavior transformed animal characteristics into direct guidelines for human conduct, particularly for individuals with leadership responsibilities. The eagle's nest building on inaccessible heights similarly provided metaphors for social elevation and exclusive access to privileged knowledge, reinforcing hierarchical structures. Complementing the solar eagle in central Mexican symbolism stood the jaguar, a creature of night, earth, and underworld realms, representing the nocturnal and chthonic forces. With its ability to move comfortably through darkness and its distinctive spotted coat reminiscent of stars against the night sky, the jaguar embodied powers opposite yet complementary to the eagle's solar associations, creating a balanced duality. The Jaguar Warrior Society paralleled the Eagle Warriors, forming balanced military orders that represented both celestial and terrestrial powers, ensuring a comprehensive martial force. Jaguar symbolism carried strong connections to rulership through the concept of the war jaguar, a transformational capability attributed to powerful individuals. Native rulers sometimes claimed the ability to assume jaguar form through spiritual practices, gaining access to non-human perception and power, enhancing their authority. Archaeological evidence from earlier Mesoamerican civilizations demonstrates the antiquity of jaguar symbolism, with Olmec sculptures depicting human jaguar transformations dating to over 1,000 years before the rise of Tenochtitlan, showing its enduring legacy. The serpent occupied a position of particular theological complexity, simultaneously representing wisdom, fertility, and dangerous power, reflecting its multifaceted nature. The feathered serpent form of Quetzalcoatl merged terrestrial and celestial qualities, creating a composite being capable of mediating between cosmic realms, embodying harmony. Ordinary snakes, with their remarkable ability to shed skin and emerge renewed, provided powerful symbols of transformation and cyclical renewal that profoundly influenced religious practices surrounding agricultural cycles and human life transitions. The serpent renews itself like the moon, observes one poetic fragment, connecting reptilian skin shedding to larger cosmic cycles, drawing parallels between micro and macro phenomena. This careful observation of natural processes as direct reflections of divine patterns characterized indigenous religious thought. creating a worldview where proper understanding of plants and animals provided essential knowledge about cosmic operations and human existence. The serpent's ability to move without limbs, to strike with precision, and to consume prey much larger than itself, all carried profound symbolic significance applicable to human circumstances and moral lessons. Hummingbirds held special significance through their intimate association with Huitzilopochtli, whose name itself incorporates the Nahuatl term for these distinctive birds. Their remarkable energy, aggressive territorial behavior despite their small size, and apparent ability to die through torpor each night and miraculously revive daily. Powerfully paralleled solar patterns and warrior virtues, linking them to the sun and martial prowess. The iridescent feathers of hummingbirds ranked among the most precious materials in Nahuatl culture, reserved for royal regalia and high-status ritual objects, symbolizing their divine connection. Fallen warriors received the profound honor of returning to Earth as hummingbirds after completing their sacred service accompanying the sun across the sky. This afterlife transformation rewarded appropriate martial conduct with continued existence in one of nature's most admired forms, offering a powerful incentive for bravery. The hummingbird's ability to hover and move in all directions symbolized freedom and transcendence of ordinary limitations, qualities associated with properly conducted warrior service and spiritual liberation. Beyond these prominent examples, numerous other animals carried specific symbolic associations that influenced native understanding of their characteristics and proper treatment. Rabbits connected to lunar deities and fertility, their image visibly imprinted in the moon's face according to indigenous perception. Quails symbolized sensual pleasure and agricultural abundance, but also warned against reckless behavior. Butterflies represented the souls of warriors and women who died in childbirth, returning from celestial realms to visit during specific festival periods, connecting the living and the dead. Dogs held particular significance for their crucial role as psychopomps, guides who helped human souls navigate the dangerous river crossing during their underworld journey, making them indispensable companions for the deceased. Xolotl, the canine deity associated with lightning, transformation, and twins, guided the sun through its nightly underworld transit, further solidifying the dog's role in cosmic journeys. This vital spiritual function gave dogs special status despite their ordinary appearance, with certain breeds specifically raised for funeral sacrifice to accompany deceased owners on their afterlife journey, demonstrating their profound importance. In the plant kingdom, maize, corn, occupied the position of supreme religious significance. More than merely a food staple, maize embodied divine substance directly connected to human creation itself. The peoples of central Mexico literally understood themselves as people of the maize, their flesh formed from the same sacred material as their primary food source, creating an unbreakable bond. This intimate connection transformed agricultural activities from mere food production into sacred participation in cycles established through divine sacrifice, elevating farming to a ritual act. The discovery of maize formed a central and pivotal episode in Nahuatl mythology. According to various accounts, Quetzalcoatl observed ants carrying maize kernels from inside a mountain. Transforming himself into a black ant, he followed them to their source and miraculously discovered the precious food. With assistance from other deities, he split open the mountain and revealed maize in multiple vibrant colors: white, yellow, red, and blue, establishing the varieties still cultivated throughout Mesoamerica today. This mythology firmly established maize as a divine gift requiring proper ritual acknowledgement, rather than merely a natural resource to be exploited. Farmers throughout the region meticulously conducted ceremonies before planting, during growth phases, and at harvest to maintain appropriate relationships with the maize spirits, ensuring bountiful yields. Even household preparation of corn involved ritual elements, with women offering prayers while grinding kernels on the metate and cooking tortillas on the comal, imbuing daily tasks with spiritual meaning. The maguey plant, agave, held second place only to maize in religious and practical significance. This remarkable succulent provided multiple essential resources: fiber for clothing and rope, thorns for ritual bloodletting, building materials from dried stalks, and the fermented beverage pulque from its sap. The goddess Maihul personified the maguey, her body parts corresponding to different portions of the plant, and her multiple breasts representing the plant's abundant productivity, highlighting its nurturing aspect. Pulque, the milky fermented maguey beverage, carried complex religious associations. Considered the blood of the maguey, pulque represented divine substance with both nourishing and intoxicating properties. Its controlled consumption played essential roles in specific religious ceremonies, facilitating spiritual communion, while excessive use faced strict social prohibition, emphasizing moderation. The Sensintotocton, for 100 rabbits, represented pulque intoxication's many manifestations, with each rabbit deity embodying a different form of drunken behavior, providing a symbolic taxonomy of inebriation. Amaranth served both nutritional and ritual functions. Its tiny seeds provided essential protein, while its red color created strong associations with blood and sacrifice, linking it to vital life forces. During certain festivals, artisans meticulously crafted detailed sculptures from amaranth dough mixed with honey, creating edible images of deities that participants would symbolically consume. This practice, offering particular theological parallels to Christian communion, became an early target of Spanish prohibitions during the colonial period, as it was seen as a rival religious ritual. Sacred mushrooms, particularly those with psychoactive properties, held special status for their profound ability to facilitate divine communication. Called Tiananacatl, or divine flesh, these fungi provided access to visionary experiences interpreted as direct contact with supernatural realms. Specialized ritual practitioners controlled their use, creating carefully managed contexts for these powerful substances, ensuring their proper and safe application. Stone sculptures of mushrooms from various Mesoamerican sites testify to their long-standing sacred associations and importance. The prickly pear cactus, famously featured in the Tenochtitlan Foundation myth, represented resilience, sustenance amid challenging conditions, and the powerful union of opposites, thorns and sweet fruit. Its ability to produce sweet fruit from seemingly inhospitable terrain paralleled the indigenous transformation from a wandering tribe to a powerful imperial state, symbolizing their triumph over adversity. The nopal cactus featured prominently in place names, artistic representations, and imperial symbolism. Its distinctive form instantly recognizable throughout the Valley of Mexico as a powerful emblem. Flowers occupied a position of particular cultural and religious significance beyond merely aesthetic appreciation. The term, flower, frequently appeared in metaphorical expressions relating to truth, beauty, and transient existence, imbuing it with deeper meaning. Poetry itself was often described as flower and song, suggesting that artistic expression represented the most precious and elevated aspects of human capability and spiritual insight. Specific flowers carry distinct symbolic associations: marigolds with the dead, water lilies with rulership, and magnolias with feminine beauty, each serving a unique purpose in ritual and art. Flower imagery permeated warfare contexts through the concept of Zaquiyayotl, or flowery war, conflicts conducted primarily to capture sacrificial victims rather than for territorial conquest. Warriors who died in battle or sacrifice were said to transform into flowers in the afterlife, their essence returning to earth in beautiful, fragrant form. This profound metaphorical connection between bloodshed and blossoming transformed warfare from mere violence into participation in a cosmic flowering, elevating sacrifice to a beautiful act of renewal. The cultivation of chinampas, the famous floating gardens of Tenochtitlan, integrated practical agriculture with profound religious symbolism. These artificial growing platforms, meticulously created by layering aquatic vegetation, mud, and soil, allowed intensive cultivation on lake surfaces otherwise unsuitable for farming. The remarkable productivity of these systems, capable of producing multiple harvests annually, represented divine abundance, made manifest through appropriate human cooperation with natural processes, showcasing a harmonious relationship with nature. Sacred trees occupied specific positions within the indigenous cosmic geography. The ceiba, or pochot, Ceiba pentandra, represented the axis mundi, the world tree connecting the underworld, earthly realm, and celestial levels with its distinctive buttress roots, straight trunk, and spreading canopy. The ceiba physically embodied the three-level cosmic structure, serving as a powerful symbolic link. Other tree species carried specific associations with individual deities: cypress with death gods, mesquite with fertility, and flowering trees with creative transformation, each imbued with unique spiritual qualities. The quetzal bird, though not native to the Valley of Mexico, provided the most valued feathers in Mesoamerican ceremonial contexts. These brilliant green tail plumes, acquired through extensive trade with tropical regions, adorned the most sacred regalia, reserved for deities and rulers, signifying immense status. The bird's name formed part of Quetzalcoatl's compound identity, precious feathered serpent, and its plumes symbolized the most rarefied aspects of divine presence manifest in the material world, representing divine beauty and preciousness. Beyond specific species, entire ecological zones carried distinctive spiritual associations. Mountains represented not merely geographical features, but the earthly manifestations of ancient deities turned to stone, making them sacred landscapes. Lakes and springs functioned as entrances to Tolocan, the paradisiacal realm of the rain deity, where the souls of those who died by water resided. Caves provided crucial access points to the underworld, with stalactites and stalagmites representing the bones of the earth, imbuing these natural formations with profound meaning. These associations transformed the natural landscape into a thoroughly sacralized geography, where every feature held spiritual significance. This intimate connection between natural entities and divine powers created a worldview where proper ecological relationships carried profound religious significance. Excessive exploitation of resources represented not merely practical short-sightedness but spiritual transgression, a violation of the sacred balance. While the Triple Alliance certainly impacted their environment through urban development, agricultural expansion, and resource extraction, their religious framework encouraged awareness of limits and appropriate reciprocity with the natural systems upon which human communities fundamentally depended. When Spanish colonizers introduced European attitudes toward nature as primarily a resource domain to be dominated for human benefit, the conceptual clash created profound misunderstandings and conflicts. The indigenous approach to sacred animals and plants as manifestations of divine power deserving appropriate respect differed fundamentally from the European Christian perspective that placed humans' eye and dominion over a separate natural world. This theological divergence contributed significantly to broader colonial conflicts beyond merely religious practices, impacting land use and resource management. The rich symbolism associated with plants and animals in Central Mexican thought demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of ecological relationships long before the development of modern scientific ecology. Through careful and prolonged observation of natural patterns, the native peoples recognized fundamental principles of interdependence, cyclical transformation, and systemic balance. Their religious frameworks encoded this ecological knowledge in memorable forms that facilitated its transmission across generations and its practical application in daily contexts, ensuring the longevity of their wisdom. The pre-conquest peoples of central Mexico conceived of the universe as a carefully structured arrangement of multiple realms, each with distinct qualities, inhabitants, and specific relationships to human experience. Far from the simple heaven, earth, and hell division familiar to European traditions, their cosmic architecture featured 13 ascending heavens, 9 descending underworlds, and the earthly realm meticulously positioned between these vertical extensions. This elaborate model provided a comprehensive framework for understanding both natural phenomena and spiritual experiences, creating a universe where humans occupied a meaningful and active position within a larger cosmic order, emphasizing their role in cosmic maintenance. The vertical structure of this indigenous cosmos resembled a layered disk, with the earthly realm, Huitzilopochtli, At the very center, heavens rising above it, and underworlds descending below. The entire arrangement was meticulously oriented according to the cardinal directions, with each direction associated with specific colors, elemental forces, and distinctive divine patrons, creating a comprehensive spatial and spiritual map. This intricate integration of vertical and horizontal dimensions created a three-dimensional cosmic map that physically manifested in temple architecture, city planning, and ritual movements, making abstract cosmology tangible. At the summit of this cosmic structure resided Omiokan, the place of duality, the 13th and highest heaven, where the primordial divine pair Ometeotl, Huitzilopochtli, and Huitzilopochtli eternally dwelled. From this supreme level, divine creative energy flowed downward through successively more concrete manifestations until it reached the material world, demonstrating a hierarchical flow of divine power. Each heavenly level housed specific deities and cosmic forces, meticulously arranged in descending order of abstraction and increasing connection to earthly concerns, reflecting their roles in creation. Above all is the place of duality, explains one indigenous account, beyond which nothing exists. This ultimate realm transcended ordinary human comprehension, accessible only through the most refined spiritual practices or after death for select individuals who had served particular deities, highlighting its profound mystery. Unlike the personal afterlife destination familiar to Christian theology, Omiokan functioned primarily as a cosmic source rather than a reward. Though certain divine servants might eventually return to this primordial unity. Below Omiokan, the remaining heavenly levels house various divine manifestations, meticulously arranged according to cosmic function and elemental associations. The specific deities inhabiting each level varied somewhat across different accounts, reflecting regional variations. But the general structure maintained remarkable consistency. Celestial bodies occupied specific heavens, the sun and moon at lower levels, stars at higher ones, creating a model that both explained astronomical observations and provided cosmic context for earthly experiences, integrating scientific and spiritual knowledge. The sixth heaven held particular significance as Tlalocan, the paradise realm governed by Tlaloc, where those who died by water-related causes, drowning, lightning strikes, certain diseases, would reside after death. Unlike the somber underworld destination awaiting most individuals, Tlalocan offered eternal abundance, comfort, and pleasure. A verdant and desirable afterlife. This verdant paradise featured perpetual springtime, flowing waters, and endless fertility, qualities vividly reflected in the elaborate murals of Tlalocan discovered at Teotihuacan and other archaeological sites, showing its widespread cultural importance. In Tlalocan, all is green and cool, describes one poetic fragment. The granaries never empty, the flowers never wither. This paradisiacal afterlife destination did not depend on moral conduct or ethical behavior, but strictly on the manner of death, with Tlaloc claiming those who perished through his elemental domain of water. This concept reflected a broader indigenous understanding that death circumstances, rather than lifetime behavior, primarily determined one's afterlife experience, offering a different moral framework. The earthly realm, Huitzilopochtli, occupied the central and pivotal position within this cosmic arrangement. Far from merely physical terrain, the earth embodied powerful female divine power through various manifestations, including Tlaloc, Earth Lord, Coyolxauhqui, Serpent Skirt, and Huitzilopochtli, Snake Woman, reflecting its feminine and nurturing aspects. The Earth's surface was believed to rest on the back of a great caiman, floating in primordial waters, a precarious position requiring constant maintenance through ritual offerings to prevent catastrophic instability, emphasizing its fragility and reliance on human action. At the Earth's center rose the cosmic axis, often visualized as a great ceiba tree whose roots reached deep into the underworld, while its branches extended into celestial realms. This vertical connector, combined with the four quarters established by the cardinal directions, created the quincunx pattern, 4 points around a center, that appeared repeatedly in indigenous sacred architecture, art, and ritual arrangements. This pattern physically embodied the cosmic structure, transforming abstract cosmology into tangible spatial organization, making the universe comprehensible. Beneath the earthly realm descended the 9 levels of Mictlan, the underworld domain, meticulously ruled by Huitzilopochtli and Mictecacitruadal, the Lord and Lady of Death. Unlike European concepts of hell as punishment for sin, Mictlan represented the neutral afterlife destination for most humans, regardless of their mortal conduct or moral deeds. The arduous journey through these 9 descending levels typically took 4 years to complete, with the soul facing progressively more challenging obstacles before reaching final rest in the deepest underworld. The path to Mictlan is arduous, warns one funeral text. First comes the passage between clashing mountains, then the crossing of 8 deserts and 8 hills. Other formidable obstacles included a terrifying river of blood guarded by fierce jaguars, regions of biting winds that cut like obsidian knives, and various supernatural predators seeking to devour the traveling soul, making the journey perilous. Proper funeral rituals provided essential assistance for this difficult journey, explaining the elaborate mortuary practices meticulously documented throughout the indigenous realm. Specific preparations equipped the deceased for successful navigation of the underworld challenges, ensuring their safe passage. A red thread attached to the corpse was believed to guide the soul through labyrinthine passages, providing direction. Obsidian blades provided crucial protection against supernatural threats, offering a form of defense. Most importantly, a Huitzilopochtli dog, a distinctive hairless breed, would be sacrificed to accompany the deceased, carrying them across the final river obstacle. Chiknawapan, or 9 waters. These practical provisions reflected the indigenous view of the afterlife as a tangible journey requiring physical equipment rather than merely a spiritual transition, highlighting their practical and material understanding of the spiritual realm. Alternative afterlife destinations existed for specific death circumstances, beyond those claimed by Tlaloc. Warriors who died bravely in battle and sacrificial victims ascended to Tonatiuhcan, House of the Sun, where they accompanied the sun during its daily journey across the sky, a glorious destiny. After 4 years of this distinguished service, these souls returned to Earth as hummingbirds and butterflies, continuing their existence in a transformed state. Women who died in childbirth were considered female warriors who had captured a prisoner, the newborn, while losing their own battle. They traveled to Siwatlampa, the place of women, in the western sky, where they became Siwatateo, divine women who accompanied the sun from noon to sunset, receiving an honorable afterlife. The ancient understanding of space transcended mere physical location to encompass profound symbolic significance. Their landscape bristled with sacred associations, historical memories, and divine connections that transformed geographical features into meaningful participants in cosmic narratives. From mythical places of origin to the carefully planned urban environment of Tenochtitlan, sacred geography provided a spatial framework that oriented not only physical movement but also spiritual understanding and political legitimacy, grounding their world in sacred space. At the heart of origin myth stood Aztlan, the legendary homeland from which the ancestors began their migration. Described in various accounts as an island within a lake surrounded by reeds and waterfowl, Aztlan established the pattern that would later manifest in Tenochtitlan's lacustrine setting. A mirrored origin. The name, Aztec, itself derives from this place of origin, literally meaning people of Aztlan, though they themselves preferred their later self-designation associated with Mexi, their tribal leader during the migration period. The place of whiteness, or place of herons, as some linguistic interpretations render Aztlan, existed simultaneously as a geographical location and a symbolic concept. Despite numerous archaeological attempts to identify its historical position, Aztlan functioned primarily as a mythological reference point rather than a verifiable site. This ambiguity served important cultural purposes. allowing indigenous groups to claim distinctive origins while connecting to broader Mesoamerican migration traditions, fostering both uniqueness and shared heritage. The migration from Aztlan began with divine instruction, establishing the pattern of supernatural guidance that would characterize the entire journey. Huitzilopochtli, not yet elevated to primary patron deity, commanded the ancestors to depart and follow his divine direction toward their destined homeland. This divinely mandated journey transformed physical movement into a sacred pilgrimage, with each stopping point acquiring profound significance within a predetermined spiritual narrative, imbuing their history with divine purpose. Along the migration route, several locations gained particular prominence in sacred history. Chikamaztoc, 7 caves, represented the birthplace of the various tribal groups who would later inhabit central Mexico. From these 7 wombs within the earth emerged the distinct peoples who would eventually populate the Valley of Mexico, signifying a shared ancestral point. This shared origin point established crucial connections between otherwise competitive groups, creating a common mythological heritage that facilitated later political relationships and alliances. Coatepec, Serpent Mountain, marked the miraculous birthplace of Huitzilopochtli, and the site of his epic battle with Coyolxauhqui and the star deities. This location established the cosmic pattern that would later manifest in Tenochtitlan's Templo Mayor. With the temple platform representing the mountain and the Coyolxauhqui relief at its base recreating the original mythological configuration, making the temple a living myth. When sacrificial victims' bodies tumbled down the temple stairs onto this stone, the primordial battle between Huitzilopochtli and his celestial siblings was ritually reenacted, reinforcing cosmic cycles. The decision to settle at Tenochtitlan came through a clear divine sign rather than merely practical considerations. After generations of wandering and temporary settlements, the people witnessed the prophesied eagle perched upon a cactus with a serpent in its grasp or beak. This pivotal vision, occurring on a small island in Lake Texcoco, fulfilled Huitzilopochtli's promise and definitively established the location for their permanent capital, a divinely chosen site. The challenging lacustrine environment, requiring innovative chinampas, floating garden, agriculture, and extensive causeway construction, reinforced the site's sacred significance through its very impracticality for conventional settlement, demonstrating divine intervention. And when they saw the eagle, they wept and said, "We have reached the promised place," recounts one indigenous history. This emotional recognition transformed an unremarkable island into the cosmic center that would anchor identity for generations, becoming the heart of their empire. The eagle image became the primary imperial symbol, appearing prominently on monuments, codices, and ceremonial objects throughout the realm, a visual shorthand for divine selection and destined greatness, despite humble beginnings. The urban design of Tenochtitlan itself physically embodied cosmic principles through careful spatial organization. The city was divided into 4 main quadrants, calpuli, radiating from the central sacred precinct, meticulously reflecting the cardinal directions with their associated colors, elements, and divine patrons. This quartered arrangement recreated the quincunx pattern, 4 points around the center, that symbolized cosmic structure throughout Mesoamerican cultures, transforming daily movement through urban space into participation in sacred geography, making every step meaningful. Each city quadrant contained local temples, markets, and administrative centers, creating semi-autonomous neighborhoods within the larger urban framework. These divisions reflected not merely administrative convenience but cosmic organization, with specific deities and ancestral connections associated with each district. Residents identified strongly with their home quadrant, participating in localized ceremonies while simultaneously engaging with citywide observances centered on the main temple precinct. The sacred precinct at Tenochtitlan's heart contained approximately 78 religious structures, with the massive Templo Mayor dominating the skyline. This central temple, dedicated to both Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc through twin shrines atop a single platform, physically manifested the dual foundations of imperial power, military conquest, and agricultural fertility, representing the balance of their society's needs. Its carefully aligned stairways, precisely oriented to capture particular solar phenomena on significant calendar dates, transformed the architecture into an astronomical instrument, connecting earthly and celestial realms. Mountains throughout the Valley of Mexico held particular sacred significance as both natural features and divine manifestations. Popocatépetl and Iztaccíhuatl, the region's dominant volcanic peaks, featured prominently in mythology as transformed lovers, their distinctive profiles resembling a sleeping woman and a watchful warrior. Smaller mountains surrounding the valley housed shrines to local deities, particularly Tlaloc and his associates, whose rain-bringing powers were believed to emerge from these elevated locations where clouds gathered around summits. These sacred mountains required proper ritual acknowledgement when visible or visited. Travelers ascending slopes for ceremonial purposes underwent purification rituals and carried appropriate offerings for mountain deities, demonstrating reverence for the landscape. Stone shrines at various elevations provided designated offering points, with different altitudes associated with specific divine forces, reflecting a layered spirituality. The highest summit shrines, often subject to lightning strikes and dramatic weather manifestations, generally remained reserved for professional priests rather than ordinary worshippers, indicating their elevated sacred status. Water features throughout the landscape carried distinctive sacred associations. Springs represented points where underworld waters emerged into terrestrial space, creating natural thresholds between cosmic realms, requiring particular ritual attention. Lakes functioned as reflective surfaces connecting earth and sky, their mirror-like qualities physically manifesting the understanding that cosmic realms reflected one another, creating a visual metaphor. Rivers served as natural boundaries between territories, but also as symbolic manifestations of Coyolxauhqui's flowing skirts, spreading fertility across the landscape, linking them to a nurturing deity. The relationship with Lake Texcoco dramatically demonstrates the sophisticated integration of practical necessity with sacred significance. While the lake provided essential resources through fishing, transportation routes, and defensive advantages, it simultaneously held spiritual meaning, requiring ritual offerings for all activities, whether fishing expeditions or reed gathering, creating a consciousness where economic exploitation balanced with sacred reciprocity. Caves throughout Mesoamerica functioned as particularly charged sacred locations, representing physical passages between the terrestrial and underworld domains. The Spanish conquistador Bernal Diaz described discovering elaborate cave shrines during the conquest period, noting the presence of offerings, ritual paraphernalia, and evidence of regular ceremonial visitation. These natural formations required special ritual handling, with inappropriate cave entry or usage potentially releasing dangerous underworld forces into terrestrial space, emphasizing caution. Ancient architectural sites from previous civilizations acquired specific significance within sacred geography. The ancient city of Teotihuacan, already abandoned for centuries before the rise of the Mexica Empire, became incorporated into mythological frameworks as the birthplace of the fifth sun, lending it immense prestige. Regular pilgrimages to Teotihuacan connected people to this prestigious ancestral site while allowing them to conduct ceremonies at locations believed to mark actual cosmic creation points, fostering continuity with the past. This relationship with abandoned cities established continuity with earlier cultures while positioning current peoples as rightful inheritors of their power and prestige, legitimizing their rule. The practical navigation of this sacred landscape required specialized knowledge transmitted through both formal education and community tradition. Professional priests understood the complex associations between locations and divine forces, determining appropriate timing, directional approaches, and ritual offerings for specific sites, ensuring proper reverence. Ordinary people learned essential aspects of sacred geography through participation in community ceremonies, marketplace interactions, and family traditions that embedded cosmic understanding in daily spatial practice, making spiritual knowledge widespread. Beyond these major cosmic divisions existed various liminal zones mediating between realms. Caves represented physical passages between earthly and underworld domains, explaining their significance as ritual sites and places of transformation. Mountain peaks provided access points to celestial realms, particularly appropriate for ceremonies honoring Tlaloc and other rain deities, linking them to the source of life-giving water. Springs and lakes connected to underworld waters, requiring special offerings and ceremonial acknowledgement when encountered or utilized, demonstrating respect for nature's bounty. Cardinal directions organized the horizontal dimension of this cosmic structure, each associated with specific colors, elements, and divine patrons. East represented light, fertility, and new beginnings, associated with red coloration and the rising sun, symbolizing renewal. North embodied cold, ancestral wisdom, and death, associated with black and darkness, representing the mysteries of the unseen. West signified females, moisture, and the setting sun, associated with white or blue-green coloration, representing cycles of life and death. South represented heat, youth, and raw energy, associated with blue coloration, though some accounts suggest yellow, embodying vitality. This directional symbolism physically manifested in Tenochtitlan's urban layout, with the city divided into 4 main quarters radiating from the sacred precinct at the center. The capital thus became a three-dimensional representation of cosmic structure, with the Templo Mayor rising towards celestial realms while symbolically containing underworld access through basement chambers and sacrificial stones. Ordinary citizens navigating the city streets participated in cosmic patterns through their daily movements, physically embodying theological principles through spatial practice, making their everyday lives sacred. The complete cosmic structure established an ordered framework within which all experience, natural phenomena, human activities, and spiritual encounters could be meaningfully positioned. Thunderstorms represented not merely meteorological events, but interactions between Tlaloc's realm and the earthly domain. Unusual dreams suggested tonally wanderings in celestial or underworld territories, revealing hidden meanings. Even seemingly ordinary occurrences like changes in animal behavior carried potential significance as manifestations of cross-realm influence, requiring proper interpretation and understanding. This elaborate cosmology provided both explanation and prescription. It meticulously explained the ordered movement of celestial bodies, the predictable cycles of seasons, and the inevitability of death through coherent mythological frameworks, bringing order to the universe. Simultaneously, it prescribed appropriate human responses to these cosmic patterns through precise ritual practices, carefully calibrated to maintain harmony between realms and prevent cosmic imbalance. The resulting religious consciousness positioned humans neither as passive observers nor absolute masters of creation, but as essential and active participants in maintaining cosmic balance, emphasizing their vital role. The comprehensive spatial understanding of ancient central Mexico thus integrated vertical cosmic structure with horizontal geographic organization into a sophisticated system, orienting both physical movement and spiritual understanding. This intricate arrangement transformed seemingly ordinary locations into meaningful participation points in cosmic processes, creating landscapes thoroughly imbued with sacred significance rather than merely material terrain. The remarkable accuracy of celestial alignments in temple architecture and urban planning confirms that these cosmic patterns profoundly guided practical development rather than merely providing post-hoc justification for pragmatic decisions, demonstrating a deep integration of belief and practice. The elaborate ceremonial life of ancient central Mexico represented not mere superstition but a sophisticated engagement with cosmic patterns believed essential for universal maintenance. Their observance system, meticulously organized through remarkably precise time calculations, created an annual cycle of celebrations that synchronized human activity with divine rhythms. At the heart of these practices stood blood offering, from modest personal bloodletting to full sacrificial rites, understood as necessary reciprocity for the divine blood spilled during creation. This ceremonial framework provided both profound cosmic significance and practical structure for indigenous society at every level, guiding all aspects of life. The foundation of ritual timing rested on two interlocking calendar systems whose combined operation produced an intricate mechanism for tracking time and determining appropriate ceremonial occasions. The Tanapwali, or day count, consisted of 260 days, formed by the combination of 20-day signs with 13 numbers. Alongside this spiritual calendar operated the Zayapawali, or year count, a 365-day solar calendar divided into 18 months of 20 days each, plus 5 final, empty days, considered particularly dangerous and inauspicious. These time-keeping methods operated simultaneously, with any given day identified by both its spiritual and solar designation. The two cycles realigned completely only once every 52 years, creating the fundamental unit of deep time known as the calendar round, or year bundle. This cycle culminated in the dramatic new fire ceremony, when all flames throughout the region were extinguished and ritually rekindled from a single sacred fire ignited in the chest cavity of a sacrificial participant, symbolizing cosmic renewal and continuation. The divine powers established the days. The count of days, states one indigenous account. They created a day for each of the gods. This supernatural association gave each calendar position distinctive qualities, influencing activities conducted under its influence. Time specialists, known as day counters, interpreted these patterns for both state ceremonies and individual consultations, determining favorable timing for warfare, marriage, construction projects, long-distance travel, and other significant undertakings, providing essential guidance for life. The yearly calendar's 18 20-day periods each featured specific ceremonial observations focused on different deities and agricultural concerns, appropriate to seasonal conditions. Adalkawalo, corresponding to February-March in the Western calendar, honored Tlaloc and other water deities at the end of the dry season, with children presented on mountaintops to encourage rainfall for the coming planting season. Toxcatl celebrated Tezcatlipoca through the offering of a handsome young man who had lived for a year as the deity's impersonator, a profound act of devotion. Panquetzalazli honored Huitzilopochtli at the height of harvest season through elaborate ceremonies, including ritual races, gladiatorial combat, and heart extraction, linking divine worship to agricultural abundance. These state-sponsored observances involved carefully choreographed performances incorporating music, dance, elaborate costumes, and precisely timed ritual actions. Professional religious specialists underwent years of rigorous training to perform their roles correctly, while noble participants practiced for months before major ceremonies, highlighting the dedication required. Mistakes in procedural execution were considered dangerous omens, potentially inviting divine displeasure, with historical records documenting instances where ceremonial errors preceded military defeats or natural disasters, interpreted as supernatural punishment. Blood occupied the central and most sacred position within this ceremonial system as the most precious substance available for divine offering. The indigenous peoples understood blood as direct participation in the primordial sacrifice that had created and continues to sustain the world. Just as these supernatural powers had spilled their own essence to set the sun in motion at the beginning of the fifth sun, humans now bore the sacred responsibility for continuing this essential nourishment through their own blood offerings, ensuring cosmic vitality. Self-sacrifice, or bloodletting from one's own body, represented the most common form of blood offering practiced across all social classes. Using maguey thorns, stingray spines, or obsidian blades, individuals would pierce their earlobes, tongues, or genitals, collecting the resulting fluid on bark paper that would then be burned to transmit the offering to divine recipients. The pain involved was understood not as punishment but as meaningful participation in cosmic maintenance, connecting human experience directly to divine precedent. Blood is precious water, noted one ritual text, using the reverential term that connected blood to the most valued substances in Mesoamerican aesthetics, jade and quetzal feathers. This perspective transformed blood from merely biological material into sacred substance capable of mediating between human and divine realms. The visual and conceptual association between blood and water created a parallel understanding between bloodletting and rainfall, with human offerings encouraging corresponding divine response in agricultural fertility, linking human action to natural cycles. Heart extraction, the most dramatic form of Nahua ritual practice, built upon extensive precedent from earlier Mesoamerican civilizations, but achieved unprecedented scale and elaboration under Triple Alliance sponsorship. The procedure involved precise ceremonial movements culminating in the removal of the still-beating heart from a living participant, performed by specialized priests using obsidian knives. The heart, containing the divine spark, would be offered in stone receptacles before further ritual treatment of the body according to specific ceremonial requirements, ensuring its proper spiritual journey. The individuals selected for heart offerings varied according to ceremonial context. War captives predominated for solar warrior deities like Huitzilopochtli, their capture and presentation understood as completing the cosmic battle pattern established in mythology, a continuation of divine struggle. Enslaved persons constituted another significant category, particularly those with specific physical characteristics or talents appropriate to particular deities, chosen for their suitability to the divine. Volunteer offerings occasionally occurred, especially for ceremonies promising distinctive afterlife destinations, though these represented exceptional rather than standard practice, highlighting the rarity of such ultimate devotion. Contrary to European accounts emphasizing only the culminating moment of heart extraction, indigenous sacrificial practices involved elaborate preparation and treatment of those selected. Many underwent months of purification, training, and ceremonial preparation, coming to embody the deity they would ultimately feed through their sacrifice. This identification transformed the process from mere elimination into sacred transformation, with the offered individual's essence joining directly with the divine power they had temporarily embodied, signifying a profound spiritual union. Young children presented to Tlaloc and other water deities received particularly careful preparation and distinctive ceremonial treatment. Their tears, shed during the procession to mountain shrines, were considered precious precursors to the rainfall their offering would encourage, linking their innocence to vital natural phenomena. These children were not viewed as victims in the contemporary sense, but as essential participants in agricultural renewal, whose essence would transform into life-giving precipitation. Archaeological evidence confirms these practices through recovered remains of children at mountain shrines and underwater offering sites, providing tangible proof. Beyond blood offering, native rituals incorporated numerous other elements, creating multisensory ceremonial experiences. Copal incense created distinctive aromatic environments believed to attract divine attention and facilitate appropriate purification, engaging the sense of smell. Elaborate floral arrangements symbolized beauty, transience, and spiritual elevation, appealing to sight. Music performed on drums, flutes, and rattles established rhythmic patterns, connecting human ceremonies to cosmic vibrations and engaging the sense of hearing. Dance performances physically embodied mythological narratives through precisely choreographed movements, engaging the body in sacred storytelling. Together, these elements created immersive ceremonial environments, engaging all participants regardless of their specific roles, fostering a holistic experience. The practical management of this elaborate ceremonial system required extensive institutional support and specialized knowledge. Professional religious officiants maintained distinctive appearances, with matted, blood-caked bodies and specific regalia identifying their divine associations. Training began in childhood through specialized schools where noble youths learned proper ritual procedures, time calculations, and mythological frameworks, ensuring the continuity of knowledge. Temple complexes throughout the region housed both permanent ritual specialists and the material infrastructure necessary for proper ceremonial observance, providing physical and human resources for religious life. Household practices complemented these state-sponsored ceremonies. creating daily and seasonal observances appropriate to family circumstances. Birth, naming, marriage, and funeral ceremonies followed prescribed patterns that connected individual life transitions to broader cosmic processes, imbuing personal milestones with cosmic significance. Household shrines received regular offerings, with family members performing small-scale versions of temple rituals adapted to domestic contexts. These practices embedded ceremonial consciousness in everyday experience, rather than restricting it to special occasions or locations, making the sacred an intrinsic part of daily life. Occupational groups maintained their own distinctive ritual traditions, honoring patron deities associated with their specific activities. Merchants conducted elaborate ceremonies before trading journeys, with special offerings to supernatural powers who provided protection during travel. Craftspeople honored transformation deities appropriate to their creative processes. Farmers performed ceremonies at each agricultural stage, from soil preparation through harvest, acknowledging the specific divine forces influencing each aspect of food production, reflecting their deep connection to the land. The sacred ball game represented a distinctive ritual activity, combining athletic competition with cosmic symbolism. Played on eye-shaped courts with a solid rubber ball propelled primarily by hips and thighs. The game reenacted celestial movements and mythological battles between cosmic forces. Court orientation aligned with astronomical phenomena, while the ball's movement symbolized solar and stellar trajectories, making the game a cosmic drama. Some contexts included sacrificial outcomes for game participants, though these represented exceptional rather than standard practice, despite popular misconceptions, highlighting the nuanced nature of sacrifice. Community identity found powerful expression through local festival traditions centered on patron-deity relationships. Each city-state within the broader regional system maintained special connections with particular divine forces, celebrated through distinctive ceremonial forms reflecting local history and concerns. When the Triple Alliance incorporated new territories, they typically allowed these local practices to continue alongside imposed imperial observances, creating layered ceremonial systems that respected community traditions while establishing an overarching political-religious framework. The new fire ceremony, marking each 52-year calendar completion, represented the most dramatic indigenous ritual. As the two calendar cycles prepared to realign, anxiety grew about whether the world would continue or face destruction. All flames throughout the region were extinguished, creating unprecedented darkness as people destroyed household items, fasted, and observed ritual restrictions. Ceremonial specialists observed the Pleiades passing overhead at midnight, confirming cosmic continuation through their movement, a sign of hope. A sacrificial participant then provided the chest cavity where the new sacred fire was kindled using friction sticks, with runners carrying this flame throughout the region to relight household and temple fires. And when the fire was given to the people, there was much rejoicing. Records one account of this ceremony. They knew that there would be another cycle. This dramatic ritual perfectly encapsulated the native understanding that cosmic continuation required human ceremonial participation. The darkness and uncertainty preceding fire renewal embodied existential vulnerability, while the carefully managed ceremonial response demonstrated human capability to maintain universal order through appropriate ritual action, empowering the people. For ordinary people, this ceremonial system provided both a pragmatic calendar for agricultural planning and meaningful participation in cosmic processes. The regular progression of monthly celebrations created a familiar annual rhythm, integrating seasonal changes, agricultural necessities, and theological understanding. Even when not directly participating in major state ceremonies, community members experienced these events through public processions, distinctive soundscapes, and temporary market activities associated with specific festivals. This integration embedded cosmic consciousness in everyday experience, rather than separating sacred and secular domains, making life profoundly meaningful. The dramatic disruption of this ceremonial system during the Spanish conquest created profound disorientation beyond mere political defeat. When conquerors destroyed temple complexes, killed ritual specialists, and prohibited ceremonial observations, they dismantled not merely religious practices, but the entire framework organizing time, communal identity, and cosmic relationship, causing a deep spiritual crisis. Some practices continued secretly or in blended forms incorporating Christian elements, demonstrating resilience. But the integrated ceremonial system that had structured indigenous existence suffered irreparable fragmentation. The sophisticated calendar calculations underlying native ritual practices reveal remarkable mathematical and astronomical accomplishment, often overshadowed by focus on blood sacrifice. Ceremonial specialists tracked Venus cycles, predicted eclipses, and reconciled solar and lunar movements with impressive accuracy. Their mathematical system, using base 20 calculation and sophisticated positional notation, allowed precise long-term projections necessary for maintaining ceremonial timing across generations. Highlighting their intellectual prowess, these practical achievements demonstrate that indigenous ritual practices rested on substantial empirical observation rather than merely arbitrary tradition, confirming their scientific basis. Archaeological evidence confirms the impressive material infrastructure supporting this ceremonial system. Excavations at the Templo Mayor and other sacred sites have revealed elaborate offering caches containing precisely arranged objects symbolizing cosmic principles. Specialized structures for housing ritual specialists, preparing ceremonial participants, and storing necessary equipment surrounded major temples. The extensive tribute system documented in imperial records shows significant resources dedicated specifically to obtaining materials required for proper ceremonial observance, demonstrating substantial economic investment in ritual maintenance. The central Mexican ceremonial system thus represented far more than superstitious practice or a mere political control mechanism. Their sophisticated ritual framework integrated astronomical observation, agricultural necessity, mythological understanding, and community identity into a comprehensive approach to cosmic maintenance through precisely timed blood offerings and elaborate ceremonial performances. They understood themselves as essential participants in universal processes rather than mere beneficiaries of divine favor. This perspective created a distinctive religious consciousness focused on reciprocal obligation rather than supplication, positioning humans as necessary contributors to cosmic continuation rather than passive worshippers of independent divine powers. Among the most distinctive ritual practices of ancient Mesoamerica stands the sacred ball game, known in Nahuatl as Alamalizli. Far more than mere athletic competition, this sophisticated activity combines sport, religious ceremony, political negotiation, and cosmic symbolism into a single compelling cultural institution. For the indigenous peoples of central Mexico, who inherited this ancient tradition from earlier civilizations, the ball game represented both a connection to prestigious ancestry and ongoing participation in fundamental universal processes that maintain divine order, integrating past and present. The physical setting consisted of specialized eye-shaped courts, tlachtli or tlachco, constructed throughout the region. Archaeological excavations have identified over 1,500 ball courts scattered across Mesoamerica, with examples ranging from simple earthen playing areas in small communities to elaborate stone courts with vertical walls, intricate carved panels, and temple structures in major centers. The distinctive eye shape created a narrow central alley with wider end zones, establishing the boundaries within which play occurred. The game itself involved propelling a solid rubber ball, ranging from the size of a softball to that of a basketball, depending on regional variation, primarily using hips and thighs rather than hands or feet. Participants wore specialized protective gear, including thick padded belts, knee guards, and sometimes stone, palmas, or yokes, for occasional ball handling. The basic objective involved keeping the ball in motion and directing it towards specific scoring zones, though particular rules varied across regions and time periods. The ball is round, The ball has movement, states one poetic description. The court has boundaries. The court has direction. This simple observation contains profound theological implications, with the moving ball representing celestial bodies while the court embodied ordered universal space. The east-west alignment of many courts reinforce these solar associations, with ball movement tracking the sun's daily journey. The rubber ball itself, made from latex extracted from the indigenous Castilla elastica tree, carried inherent sacred associations through its bouncing unpredictability, suggesting supernatural animation and life. The mythological foundations for this practice appear in various Mesoamerican narratives, most elaborately in the Kitsch Maya text Popol Vuh, which describes underworld ball game contests between hero twins and death deities, while Central Mexican accounts provide less detailed game mythology. Archaeological evidence confirms similar conceptual understanding through consistent court symbolism, indicating a shared pan-Mesoamerican belief system. Ball courts functioned as liminal spaces, thresholds between realms where controlled conflict could mediate between opposing forces represented by competing teams. The central alley, where play occurred, symbolized the Earth's surface, while the sloped or vertical sidewalls represented transitions to upper and lower spiritual domains. In this symbolic framework, the ball's movement between these zones enacted universal processes. The sun's daily journey, the moon's phases, Venus's transitions, or souls moving between life and death, reflecting cosmic cycles. The specialized playing gear transformed participants from ordinary humans into conduits for these celestial forces, their movements enacting divine patterns rather than merely demonstrating athletic prowess, imbuing them with sacred power. Beyond these spiritual associations, the ball games served practical social and political functions within society. Matches conducted between representatives of different communities or political entities provided a controlled context for working through tensions that might otherwise erupt into open warfare, acting as a form of conflict resolution. The substantial wagering that accompanied major games redistributed wealth through non-military channels while creating shared investment in peaceful competition. The public spectacle of important matches reinforced community bonds while demonstrating the elite's connection to prestigious ancestral traditions. Through the ball game, disputes find resolution, notes one account, highlighting this crucial conflict management function. Historical records document instances where territorial disputes, tribute disagreements, or succession questions received partial resolution through ballgame outcomes. While not replacing military options, these ceremonial contests provided alternative pathways for addressing conflicts that might otherwise escalate into more destructive forms of competition. The ritual framework thus transformed potentially divisive competition into socially constructive interaction, emphasizing order. The connection between the ball game and sacrifice appears consistently in archaeological and historical evidence, though with important nuances often overlooked in popular accounts. Rather than routine sacrifice of all losing players as sometimes portrayed in contemporary media, most games concluded without human offerings. However, certain ceremonial contexts, particularly those explicitly recreating mythological precedents or marking major calendar transitions, did incorporate sacrificial outcomes for specific participants. These special cases represented religiously significant exceptions rather than standard practice, highlighting their exceptional importance. For these sacrificial contexts, the ball game created a meaningful framework, transforming death from mere elimination into spiritual participation, making it a sacred act. Players in such ceremonial matches understood the potential outcomes before participation, with those selected for sacrifice often receiving special status, elaborate preparation, and distinctive afterlife destinations, indicating honor. The vertical stone rings mounted on some ball court walls played particular roles in these sacrificial contexts, with successful shots through these challenging targets potentially determining sacrificial selection or offering alternatives to predetermined outcomes. The rubber ball itself carried profound symbolic associations with heart sacrifice through its shared spherical form and bouncing movement suggesting animation. In some contexts, the ball explicitly represented the human heart, with its trajectory across the court symbolizing the sun's movement, nourished by sacrificial offering. This connection appears visually in certain monuments, showing decapitated players with 7 serpents representing spraying blood emerging from the neck, transforming the defeated player into a source of fertility, similar to sacrificial victims on temple platforms. Evidence for the ball game's significance appears abundantly in visual art, architecture, and material culture. Ceramic models of ball courts, complete with miniature players, demonstrate the game's cultural prominence. Stone yokes, palmas, and hatches depicting elaborately attired ball players survive as ceremonial versions of actual playing equipment. The consistent placement of ball courts near major temple complexes throughout the region indicates the activity's profound religious significance rather than merely a recreational function. Although primarily an elite male activity in its most formal manifestations, the ball game incorporated broader participation through variant forms. Children practice simpler versions as both play and preparation for potential future ceremonial roles. Evidence suggests women participated in certain contexts, particularly games associated with fertility deities or agricultural cycles. Community festivals often included ball game exhibitions with varying degrees of formality, allowing wider participation than the most religiously significant matches restricted to specially trained players. The training required for competitive ball play began in childhood for those selected for this specialized role. Young men from noble families showing particular aptitude received instruction in both technical skills and ritual significance. The physical demands, propelling a heavy rubber ball using primarily hip and thigh contact while avoiding injury, required extensive practice and conditioning. Simultaneously, these training programs instilled understanding of the symbolic significance underlying the apparently athletic activity, preparing participants for their role as embodiment of divine forces rather than mere competitors, transforming them into sacred actors. This ancient tradition originated long before the post-classic period, with archaeological evidence documenting forms of ritual ball play dating back to at least 1700 BC in earlier Mesoamerican cultures. The continuity of this practice across millennia and throughout diverse cultural regions testifies to its profound significance and adaptability. Later Central Mexican contributions involved integrating this ancestral tradition into their specific religious framework, while maintaining connection to its historical prestige. When Spanish conquerors encountered the Mesoamerican ball game, they responded with fascination tinged with moral condemnation. Bernal Diaz del Castillo described the skill of Moctezuma's ball players with admiration, while other chroniclers focused on sacrificial associations to justify suppression of the practice. The rubber ball itself, previously unknown in Europe, created particular interest, with samples sent back to Spain, where its bouncing properties seemed magical to those unfamiliar with natural latex. Despite colonial prohibition, forms of the ball game persisted in remote regions, with derivatives still played in parts of northern Mexico today, demonstrating cultural resilience. Recent archaeological discoveries continue expanding understanding of the ball game's significance. Excavations at the Templo Mayor have uncovered offering caches containing miniature ball court models and player figurines, confirming the conceptual connection between temple sacrifice and ball game symbolism. Specialized acoustic features identified in certain ball courts suggest sound played important roles in the ceremonial experience, with ball impacts creating distinctive resonance patterns, enhancing the ritual atmosphere. The enduring legacy of the Mesoamerican ball game extends beyond archaeological interest to influence contemporary cultural expressions. Modern ulama players in western Mexico maintain adapted versions of this ancient tradition, while artists and writers draw inspiration from its rich symbolic associations. The ball game represents one of the most distinctive and sophisticated cultural achievements of ancient Mesoamerica, simultaneously addressing spiritual understanding, social regulation, political negotiation, and athletic excellence through a single integrated institution. For these ancient cultures, The ball game represented a perfect microcosm of their broader religious understanding, the necessity of cyclical motion, the productive tension between opposing forces, and the integration of competition within an ordered ritual framework. Through this sophisticated ceremonial sport, abstract cosmological principles took physical form in athletic competition that simultaneously entertained, instructed, and maintained celestial balance. The court became a stage where divine drama played out through human participants whose movements enacted sacred patterns established at the beginning of the current world age. The remarkable imperial expansion of central Mexico's dominant culture, from marginalized newcomers to regional power in just over a century, rested not merely on military prowess, but on a sophisticated theological framework that transformed warfare from mere territorial acquisition into sacred obligation. Their complex mythological system provided both motivation and justification for imperial growth, while establishing distinctive patterns of conflict that differed significantly from European models of conquest. This integration of religious understanding with political expansion created a form of imperialism thoroughly embedded in celestial maintenance rather than simply human ambition.